Is protective agent for the Director of Central Intelligence, counterintelligence investigator, team leader, protected sensitive CIA assets from assassination, manager of high-risk counterterrorism center productive operations, lead instructor for members of allied governments, okay, internal staff security investigator and polygraph examiner tasked with protecting the CIA from foreign agent penetration. Recipient of 2 CIA Meritorious Unit Citations, 3 Exceptional Performance Awards, Medallion for Overseas Covert Operations, supervised the Department of State Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program, managed protective details assigned to the President of Afghanistan following the U.S. invasion. Okay, and then he got out and wrote a book. So, and without too much else, Kevin Shipp.
Appreciate y'all having me here. It's such a good turnout. It's really good to see that. And we, as Steve knows, I like to talk to Tea Party and related groups anyway, just because they're such good people. My wife and I meet some wonderful people. And I understand we got a sheriff in the back. Can you stand up, Sheriff? Give him a hand. I feel safe now. Thank you. I always like to begin by saying, effectively, I'm a recovering CIA officer. I go to CIA Officers Anonymous weekly meetings. But CIA Officers Anonymous meetings are not 12 steps, they're 24 steps. And the first 12 steps, we learn how to tell the truth again. And that's the hardest part. So I've been out for a few years, and it really does take some time to get that stuff out of your head. I did a lot of operations, a lot of traveling around the world, and I saw kind of the inside, both the good, the bad, and the ugly of the beast itself. And we're going to go through some of those slides tonight. Some of it is going to be, I think, shocking when we get into the shadow government and its connections to what I call the Clinton crime syndicate and how intricately they're tied together. It's pretty shocking. And it's not pleasant, but it's very, very chilling and very concerning. So I'm going to talk about that tonight. There have been felonies committed by our government, by senior officials in our government. These are Title 18 violations and felonies of the Constitution and U.S. law that have been committed by government officials. So we'll be talking about those. We'll keep at a good pace because we've got a lot of stuff to cover. I'm going to be talking about what I call the shadow government, which is different from the deep state. Anybody heard of the deep state lately? My goodness, man, everybody's talking. Even Rush Limbaugh's talking about it. And we're going to get a bumper sticker that says, I was talking about the deep state, but talking about the deep state wasn't cool. 5 years ago, we used to get up here and wonder what was going to happen afterwards. You know? But it's a hot topic because finally, the first time in history, it's come out in plain view where we all can see it, and it's not pretty. The government, the shadow government, is using secrecy as a weapon. It's been weaponized. The FBI is doing it now, withholding documents from Congress with their boss. I'm going to show you exactly how it works and exactly how they do that, so you understand how this thing works. And once you do, I think we'll be able to know what direction we need to go in. I always start with this. You all know this, but it's funny because it's being portrayed in many circles that the U.S. Constitution is just a piece of philosophy. It's just a nice document, kind of a moral thing that governs how we live, but it's not really legally effective. Not so. This is the supreme law of our land. This supersedes the entire criminal justice system in the United States. If you violate the Constitution or any of the amendments of the Bill of Rights, you've committed a felony or multiple felonies. So if our government does that, what's happened? They've broken the law. And we need to understand that. I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I used to be both. I'm a constitutionalist now. So I kind of stay right in the middle there. This is the one thing that sets us apart from the rest of the world and has through history. We need to defend this with our lives. We have to remember that this is the supreme law of the land. This is what it all rests on, and the entire criminal justice system falls under this. And if you would hold your questions at the end, and I think we have enough time and we're done, we'll be able to take some questions that some of you guys may have. I approach this a little differently. Most people refer to this as the deep state. You're hearing that all over the place. Since I come from the belly of the beast and having seen how this thing works from the inside, personally, the shadow government and the deep state, based on my experience, are not one and the same thing. They're two different entities that are combined together in a real complex matrix system, and I'll show you. So we've got the shadow government connected to the deep state. The shadow government's power, sadly, is in its secrecy. Secrecy used to be a good thing. It protected our troops from ambushes and operations. It protected people like us when we were overseas. We would have been killed or worse. Secrecy many times was our only protection. But now secrecy has been weaponized. We're seeing the FBI is refusing to provide documents on the so-called Russia collusion case to Congress, their boss, claiming that it's classified and it's secret. And I'll show you how they do that. The currency of the shadow government is the abuse of the power of secrecy. The currency of the deep state, I'll show you these in detail, is money, power, and greed. Bombs, missiles, bullets, and I think the average CEO in the military-industrial complex makes $27.1 million a year. So these are big bucks. And that's where the money flows. So they're different, but they're connected together. Now, what I want to talk about, I won't subject you to this, I have a whole 3-hour lecture on the shadow government. It's out there on the internet. If you've got an evening to spare and a bunch of popcorn and maybe some Vibrant or something, you can watch it. I get into some pretty good detail. So I'm going to just kind of hit the high points tonight as we work our way into the real problem that we've got going on in Washington. The shadow government is made up of all of the agencies of the federal government that operate using or through the power of secrecy. All right? I'm going to show you the size of this monolith, and then I'm going to show you the agencies that have been weaponized, they've been weaponized since the 1940s. But most importantly, in the last 8 plus years, they have really been gotten out of control. So you got the Department of Homeland Security, the National Counterterrorism Center, I don't know if this thing has a laser pointer, it doesn't matter. National Counterterrorism Center, part of the shadow government. Department of Defense, massive systems, part of the shadow government. The National Reconnaissance Office, the satellites overhead that do amazing things that I can't talk about. That's the NRO. That is a hugely secret program. They didn't even admit its existence, I think, until the mid-90s, and now they finally have. You got the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Anybody heard of that? A couple of you? The NGA worked with Google to create Google Maps. So Google Maps was created in conjunction with the shadow government. So you think that the government can't look down and read the license plate of your car? Yeah, they can, you know. The days of privacy are pretty much over, but the NGA was instrumental in that. The JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, this is the president's own private army. It's a secret army that nobody knows anything about. The president can dispatch this army at will anytime in any country for missions that are highly classified, usually against a terrorist target to make sure that target goes away. So I'm not so sure that's such a bad thing. And I'm sure there's some pretty colorful folks on that detail. But it is part of the shadow government, the secret government. Now, the ones that I have in white are the ones that have been weaponized. Now, not just recently against the Trump administration, excuse me, the NSA domestic surveillance program doesn't go back to 9/11, it goes back to before 9/11. NSA was collecting our data before 9/11 happened. Most people don't know that. Now, it was amplified 100-fold after 9/11, but it's been around for quite a while, and despite reform, I'll show you later, it's still in full force. They're still collecting our cell phones, text, data, PC, internet use, the whole shebang. They can turn your cell phone on, turn the camera and the mic on when your power is off on your cell phone, and they do. They own, our cell phone is a very sophisticated, convenient bug. Doesn't even have to be on. So they weaponize the NSA. Now, the NSA is so tied into Silicon Valley, they're basically one and the same. The NSA and the CIA helped fund the creation of Google, intimately. It was a $5 million contract. They also assisted in the funding and creation of Facebook, and a lot of the other Silicon Valley companies are tied directly into NSA. NSA uses them, they use NSA. Now, the concern about that is whenever the CIA, the NSA, or the secret parts of the FBI enter into a contract with any company, that CEO, all the way down to the secretaries, have to sign a secrecy oath with the shadow government, the CIA, what have you. Amazon has done that, Google has done that. Once the CEOs do that, they are bound by law. They can't say a thing about that program ever again, even if they see something illegal, and I've seen that happen, and they'll take that person apart. They are bound by life by that secrecy oath, and if they see something unconstitutional and they say something about it, they can face severe administrative penalties and even criminal penalties and go to jail. People say, why aren't there more whistleblowers out there about NSA domestic surveillance? Well, this is why. I mean, they'll destroy it. Sadly, that's why Edward Snowden went to Hong Kong. Because had he come out with a revelation of NS spying here, Edward Snowden would not be here today. And it's true. Whatever you think of Snowden, that information never would have gotten out. So the NSA has been weaponized. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act Court, the FISA Court, the Secret Supreme Court, against their wishes, they have been weaponized. The FBI filed, as we know, a false affidavit to get the NSA to spy on the Trump campaign. Do you know what a serious constitutional violation that is? I'm sure you do. That's multiple felonies. They swore a false affidavit to the FISA Court. The FISA Court, assuming that the FBI was telling them the truth, granted the NSA the power to unmask and spy on the Trump campaign, I think over almost 300 people, at least. And that's going on right now. They weaponized the CIA. John Brennan, director of the CIA, anybody know about him? Been watching John Brennan lately? John Brennan basically started the coup against the Trump administration by taking the false dossier, which we'll talk about, false information from Russian intelligence. It was John Brennan that started the entire dossier Russian collusion investigation and the appointment of Robert Mueller as the special counsel to get rid of Donald Trump pre- and post-election. It was a CIA operation against the president-elect. And that is not an understatement. That is not an understatement. And Brennan was the head of it. We'll talk more about him later. The 17 agencies and the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, who lied under oath about NSA surveillance, remember that? Are you spying on the American people? And I'm humbly an expert on lying and body language, and I used him as a case study for my classes at the university, because when they asked him, have you been spying on large numbers of American people, he's going, well, yeah. You remember that? Not willingly. That's what you do when you're lying. And you're trying to cover your lie, so his hands all over his face, you know, it's like, so I used to show that to my students. This is what you don't do if you're lying. So he lied under oath. He also is arrayed and was part of the fake dossier operation against Donald Trump. I'll get into the meat of that. It's going to shock you how far this operation went and how dastardly and illegal it was. It involved the DNI and James Clapper. I will show you also that this under the Obama administration leads right to the former President of the United States, Barack Obama himself. You don't hear many people say that, but I'm going to prove to you tonight, as some of you may already have conjectured, that's absolutely where it went and where it started. Weaponize the FBI, you've seen that lately? My gosh, more on that later, it's bad. The Five Eyes, this is the part that is kind of an international problem. It appears very certain that the NSA approached the Five Eyes, that's the other intelligence, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK are other intelligence partners, and we exchange information back and forth. With the UK, for example, their intelligence collection on US citizens is not bound by US law. So GCHQ can spy on Americans, and it's not illegal for the NSA to go out and take that information and spy on Trump, which is essentially what they did. I'll show you how they did that later. So we got the Five Eyes and MI6 that has been weaponized. Also, the UK government despises Donald Trump. MI6 despises Donald Trump. What did Susan Rice call it? The International World Order. It used to be called the New World Order, then the Globe. Now it's called the New International World Order. They despise Donald Trump and the global bankers, even all the way over to the United Kingdom. Been weaponized. The Department of State, we know that Christopher Steele, the former MI6, if there is such a thing, went to the Department of State and briefed John Kerry on the dossier information that they were developing or creating on Donald Trump, so the Department of State knew about it. We all know what Hillary Clinton was doing while she was there. We're going to dig into that deep this evening. But so it was weaponized also. All of this goes back to 1921 to the Council on Foreign Relations. Council on Foreign Relations still exists today. Hillary went out and briefed them. I don't remember if you saw that spot where she said, we always come to you to find out what to do before we do it. The Council on Foreign Relations exists today, and it actually sets the foreign policy for the U.S. government. It's non-elected. It is basically a secret entity. that meets and includes major members of the news media. But the CFR was instrumental in the creation of the CIA. It started in 1921 and 1947, and includes a lot of members of the mainstream media. Philip and Catherine Graham of the Washington Post were board members of the CFR. You wonder why the media's got issues? More on that later. Mainstream media, sadly, is connected in part to the shadow government. The CIA has a whole program to manipulate the news media. I wish I had time, it's a whole other lecture. Hollywood, films, and the news. They still do. Way back when it was called Operation Mockingbird, that allegedly went away. The CIA is still manipulating the news, and some of the corporations, they're still doing that today. So this is the shadow government. It is a massive monolith, and the point is it operates with the power of unconstitutional secrecy, unchecked by Congress, the American voter. It has a secret budget. It is unelected, and it engages our entire foreign policy and foreign wars without us having a say in it whatsoever. Anybody know about the continuity of government? Anybody? Continuity of government is an emergency program. If there's ever a war in the United States, the continuity of government kicks in and the Constitution is suspended. Now, after 9/11, George W. Bush declared what? A war on terror. National emergency. Continuity of government kicked in, and it still reigns today. We'll see what Trump does about it. But what that meant under Obama is they could have suspended the Constitution at any time because continuity of government under the shadow government was still in place. We'll see. I haven't heard what Trump is doing about it, but it's something to keep our eye on. Okay, we're going to go through this, and I'm going to get into some of the deep state. You hear a lot about the deep state. This is the deep state manipulated by the secret shadow government. Anybody heard of the military-industrial complex? Like, we've all heard about that. When Eisenhower gave his speech originally, he called it the military-industrial congressional complex because Congress was so tied in to being manipulated by the corporations as they are today. But the Congress and Senate worked him over and made him take the congressional part out, and he just called it the military-industrial complex. We know now that the Armed Services Committee members, 48 of them, each of them get about $700,000 a year in contributions from the military-industrial complex. John McCain, for example. So they vote for war quite a bit. They're making a lot of money through contributions into their PACs and their re-election campaigns. So Eisenhower was right. Military-industrial complex lobbyists, my gosh, billions flow in Washington through these people. Billions of dollars influencing congressmen and senators. Then you've got the donor class. We all vote, try to get our people in office, especially the GOP, and then the donor class comes in and overrides our votes and win over the Congress and the senators, and there goes the wish of the people. I mean, anybody felt the sting of that bee? I'm sure we all have. We just need to know that that is there. Wall Street, part of the deep state, Wall Street is so connected to the Treasury Department and business now, they're basically business partners. The Treasury Department works so closely with Wall Street, and they have offshore accounts that the American people don't even know about, where they're sticking money. I mean, this is our government. Foreign lobbyists. Saudi Arabia might as well have a Senate seat in Congress. They're so powerful with their lobbying. If you remember, with the 28 pages blacked out in the 9/11 Commission report, turns out it was Saudi Arabia's direct involvement in 9/11. Nothing happened to them. They're still in Washington. They're still a powerful lobbyist, and they're still going on as usual. Billions and billions of dollars. If you see, I put the system behind government. The S is a dollar sign. This is money, it's power, and it's greed. That's what drives a deep state. That's what drives a lot of congressmen and senators, sadly. It does. Intelligence contractors, defense contractors, $1 trillion a year. I think this is $500 million a year of our tax dollars go into these things, and most of these companies, we don't even know what they're spending it on. The Federal Reserve, I could spend an hour on that. Created in 1913 when we lost our financial system. That's the absolute truth. It's part of the deep state, very powerful. Everything the Federal Reserve does is in secret, right? It's not federal, and it's not a reserve. It's not a federal agency. It's a private conglomeration of banks, foreign and domestic banks. All their transactions are done in secret. Their board member, the bank's foreign bank members, are secret. It's never audited, and it runs our entire financial system. And it's not a U.S. pro-U.S. entity. It's a global entity. They're connected to the International Monetary Fund, which is also connected to the World Bank. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the deep state. And you can see the absolute unbelievable financial power of this monolith that controls our elected government along with the shadow government behind the scenes. Do you think there are some, I like Rand Paul, I'm a fan of Rand Paul and people like that. Do you think that Mr. or Mrs. Congressman or Senator, when they come into their term, wet behind the ears and all ideological, how long do you think they're going to last against this monster? Typically about 2 years before they're co-opted and they get into the money system, sadly. Either that or they're out. That is the deep state. The thing about the deep state is these people, especially here, and I don't have time to go into, I call it the secret intelligence industrial complex, these massive corporations that work for the shadow government, CIA, NSA, and others, they are engaging in policy decisions, wars, and covert operations, and they are not elected, and they are not accountable to anyone. They just go ahead and do it. And they've got the same power as the congressional branch, legislative branch of our government, or more. Okay, here we go. Does the shadow government control the elected government in Washington? And I'm going to move on, and we're going to get into some current events here. Yes, it does. My point is the shadow government and the deep state actually control our elected government behind the scenes. And that sounds kind of wacky at first, doesn't it? Until you see exactly what's going on. Let me show you. Congress, the shadow government, the CIA specifically, and the NSA manipulate congressional hearings. Trey Gowdy came out with a great oration recently and has done several times. But does anything ever happen? No. Does anything ever come out of these dramatic congressional inquiries, especially into the intelligence agencies? Never. Why do you suppose that is? They have no intention of it coming out. For any congressman or senator to dig down into the CIA and NSA means the end of his or her career. And they know it. And it includes intelligence committees. With the exception, perhaps, of Devin Nunes, who I think is kind of a hero these days. Generally speaking. They withhold clearance from Congress and senators. Okay, NSA, CIA, you've been conducting illegal domestic operations, and we're going to bring you before Congress, and we're going to investigate how or where you've broken the law. Well, Senator, Congressman, I'm sorry, you don't have the clearance to have access to that information. So, sorry, we can't tell you. They actually do that. You don't have the clearance. And if you try to get into that information, you've committed a crime, and we can put you, Mr. or Mrs. Congressman, either out of office or in jail. And they do that. I'll show you a case. Classifies documents to conceal illegal activity. I'm going to show you examples of this that are almost funny. They'll make you laugh or they'll make you cry. But when Congress, this is happening right now with the FBI. I'll show you an example. The Intelligence Committee says, all right, FBI, you turn over to us, your boss, all of the information on this so-called Russia collusion investigation. Everything on Fusion GPS, we want to see it all, and everything on the false spice affidavit. The FBI comes back, and guess what they say? We can't show you that. It's classified. You don't have to. They actually did that. They do that. It's an MO. They're doing that right now. And then when they do send it over, if they do, it's all blacked out. And the FBI just got busted because they blacked out. They blacked out Peter Strzok's, some of the comments he made against Trump were classified, so they blacked it out. They made him unredacted. And it's just him saying bad things about the president. It wasn't classified at all. They have the power to do that, and they use it with impunity. Classifies budget information. For example, my former home, the CIA, the budget is classified secret, as is the NSA's budget. Not even Congress, except for the Gang of Eight, knows how much money of our tax dollars goes to the shadow government. It's billions, but Congress has no idea how much that is. Why? Because the budget is classified secret, and the congressmen don't have the access or the clearance, so billions of dollars go to places like Syria, where they're blowing up buildings and wiping out the city, and supplementing the Free Syrian Army. Anybody heard of the Free Syrian Army that now is Al-Qaeda and has got some of the weapons with the ISIS and on it goes? Those are tax dollars that went to provide the weapons and ammunition to that group. Anybody vote for that? I didn't, at least as far as, not anybody I know did, but we used our tax dollars in secret to do that. So they manipulate Congress. The state secrets privilege, I have a whole lecture on that. We won't go into that now, but I'll give you an example. The government can, at any time that it wants, for example, they filed suit against the NSA for the domestic spying program. All right, NSA, you tell us exactly how you respond on the American people and exactly how you were doing it. After the case went on, the NSA said, no, we've got this unbridled privilege called the state secrets privilege where the executive branch can shut down a case anytime it wants with impunity, seal it forever, and not even Congress will ever see the evidence. And they use that with the NSA domestic surveillance program. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about the unbridled power, unconstitutional power of government secrecy. I wish I could say it gets better. Sadly, it doesn't. Controls the White House. Yes, they do. It blindfolds the president. The CIA has engaged in operations and is currently covert operations that the president doesn't even know about. It goes all the way back to JFK and the Bay of Pigs. It's been going on ever since. Iran-Contra, did Reagan know about it? I don't think so. I was there then. They conduct operations and they don't tell the president there's something wrong with that picture. Yeah, constitutionally, yes, there is. They manipulate the president. You remember the Iraq War? George Tenet went out and said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. He made the comment over with the British. He knew darn well that wasn't the case. There were no weapons of mass destruction. The argument was, well, they were in little vehicles and they moved them out of the country. No, there were no weapons of mass destruction. And they started what is known in the military colleges now as the worst military mistake in U.S. history. 6,000 U.S. troops dead, 200,000 wounded, and 500,000 Iraqi children died because of wrong intelligence. Now, as an intelligence officer, if you make a bad decision and it just affects you, that's one thing. But when a lot of people die, that's another thing entirely. So they can manipulate the White House. They influence the re-election. Are we seeing the influence of a presidential re-election right now by the FBI, the CIA specifically? Or is the shadow government now controlling the election of Donald Trump, the possibility in the next go-around? Darn right they are. So they're literally controlling the re-election of a president. Controls the judiciary. We've got the FISA court, which is essentially a secret Supreme Court. They're not voted in, they operate with complete secrecy. Some of what they do, based on my passing, is okay. I mean, if there is Russia's committing espionage within the United States, which they do, and they get a FISA warrant to spy on Igor, that's fine. But when they use it to spy on U.S. citizens, then that's not fine. It's a secret Supreme Court. And lastly, the state secrets privilege, as I mentioned, they coerce judges into rubber stamping this thing. And the statement that the judge made, and I've done a lot of research on this, the statement that the federal judges made was, well, we're not experts on intelligence matters, so we just defer to the executive branch. They just rubber stamp it. There have been a lot of cases of civilians who were injured or serious things happened. The government invoked the state secrets privilege to cover up the negligence, and they just rubber stamped it. And that person's case will never see the light of day. This is what Harry S. Truman. There's another Shipp in here somewhere, isn't there? Where's it? There you are. There's another S-H-I-P-P. Ironically, our great-great-great-grandfather is Harry S. Truman, Harry Shipp Sullivan Truman. So apparently, boy, what an irony. Apparently we're related, but he regretted the creation of the shadow government, specifically the CIA. He called it a sinister and mysterious agency. And he said this is in the book, there's something about the way the CIA has been functioning that is casting a shadow on our historic position of freedom, and I feel we need to correct it. 3 days later, that op-ed was removed from the Washington Post, never to be seen again. Washington Post, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, connected to the CIA, and on the loop goes. They pulled the ad after he wrote that. He said that to his dying day. He regretted the creation of specifically CIA covert operations. The point has to be made, though. Harry Truman's original goal was correct. We need a good intelligence agency, don't we? We've got some bad enemies. We've got terrorism out there. We've got the Chinese, who have every intention of usurping our democracy if they ever get the chance. The chance is slim because they're so financially dependent on us. But yes, we do. We need a good and accurate intelligence organization to collect information for our national security. We just don't need the monster that we got now. And so there's got to be some kind of congressional reform to rule this monster back in under Congress and under the Constitution, because they are manipulating our elected government without a doubt. And in what really is a post-constitutional government, they're manipulating our elected offices. Problem, size, and power. As I showed you in the first two slides, this thing is massive. How do we correct this? Well, we start with humble folks like myself, just kind of getting this out where people can see it, thanks to Steve and Jason and others, so people can see what this monster is. And once the truth gets out and the people start seeing how bad this is, we can start mobilizing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people at a time. And this is where it starts, where some moron like me gets up and takes the risk to put this stuff out there. And my wife will tell you how risky it is. I talked about weaponized secrecy, the currency of the shadow government. Remember? Sadly, they are using secrecy completely to circumvent the U.S. Constitution. I'm going to show you. It's sad, it's almost funny how they do it. But they are using secrecy to cover up unconstitutional activity, violations of international law. When Hillary ran guns into Benghazi without anybody knowing it, it was a violation of U.S. and international law. She did it anyway. Give you an example. Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch, Attorney General, having a surprise meeting on the tarmac, right? Sky Harbor Airport. Surprise meeting. It was a coincidence. No, it was not. Loretta Lynch amended her flight plan. She was supposed to fly in the next day. At the last minute, they changed their flight plan so she could fly in and meet Bill Clinton on the tarmac. Okay, so they talked about grandchildren and golf, they said, right? Yeah. Okay, so Congress demanded, okay, DOJ, show us exactly what they talked about on that tarmac. And the FBI was like, we don't have to do that, we're the FBI. Congress said, oh, yes, you do, we're your boss. So they said, they finally did, and that's what they gave them. Yeah. Something's wrong with their grandchildren, man. and it ain't good. So they ordered them again, and they got this. Golf and grandchildren? I don't think so. The Clinton crime syndicate in operation? Maybe. Here's another one. Golf and grandchildren. Remember the weaponized use of secrecy? The shadow government? This is what I'm talking about right here. And that was never unredacted. To this day, it has not. The FBI will not let this information be unredacted and the blackouts taken out. Something wrong with that? That is an unchecked power. It's an unconstitutional power. This is the appointment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller. This is his appointment letter. It goes into all the FBI. That says Special Counsel's purview, and what it's supposed to be doing is right here. That's what he's tasked to do, all in black. And that's what they released. This is what we, the people, you and I, get to see. Nothing. It doesn't say specifically what the special counsel is supposed to be investigating, because the FBI blacked it out. Now we know that special counsel guidelines in the Department of Justice mandate that a special counsel has to have a specific crime, say Russian collusion, and the investigation has got to stay only along the lines of that alleged crime, right? Is Robert Mueller doing that? No. No, he's way off the rails. Way off the rails. He's violating his own regulations, DOJ regs. But this is, I'm sure you're amazed at what his tasks are, because here it is. No one knows. You see, that's how they do it. So if you want to conceal it, if you're the shadow government, CIA, NSA, FBI, and you want to conceal something from Congress, and it's a game. I think we talked about that with somebody. Why don't these congressional committees nothing ever happens? No one ever gets indicted. No one ever gets prosecuted. They just go off to their six-figure jobs. Well, there's plenty of examples. The torture report. Congress demands that the CIA turn over all of their procedures in the torture report. Okay? If there's anything to hide, no problem. Just turn it over. The CIA refused, as they always do. Geez, I think it went on for a year. Finally, Congress demanded it, and that's what they got. Can you read anything in that document? No. And that stands today. No one can reverse it. Now President Trump, if he wanted to take the risk with some of these things to demand that they be redacted, he could. But in Washington, things don't work that easily. He's got his hands full. No doubt about that. NSA surveillance. Congress, we demand you, NSA, after Clapper had his hands all over his face, we demand that you show us what you've been, how you've been spying on American citizens. NSA said, you're not state secret privilege. We don't have to show you that. We're the NSA. Intelligence Committee said, yes, you do. We're your bosses. So finally they said, well, okay. And they provided him this. Can you read anything in that document? No. Once again, how about this one? Fast and Furious. Eric Holder held in contempt of court because he wouldn't turn over documents on behalf of the DOJ. Same thing. Went on for a year. Holder refused to do it. Finally, he said, okay, we'll cooperate, and this is what they gave. Are we seeing a pattern here? I mean, this is arrogance gone to seed. It really is. What about this? The People's Report, the 9/11 report, 28 pages, blacked out. Anybody remember that? And they wouldn't release what was in there. Turns out we know now it was connection of Saudi Arabia to 9/11. And no one's touching Saudi Arabia. But they finally released it, and those were the 28 pages. Okay? Can we see who is controlling Congress now with impunity and withholding information? That's just the tip of the iceberg. Your humble correspondent, myself, saw this personally. We talked about this earlier, Jason and myself, on a broadcast earlier today. I came across a cover-up with inside the CIA that was pretty bad. And it started with some of this I was able to get in the book, some of it they blacked out. The ability of agents to get into a computer system overseas and identify our covert personnel, which would lead to their assassination. It went on to a poisoning of a family. I developed evidence of that cover-up. I provided it to the CIA as a good soldier. And the CIA had a secret meeting with the judge. The judge told our attorneys, this information is solid. Mr. Shipp's case has got to go forward. They had a secret meeting with the judge, and they put me under a gag order. Dedicated, decorated CIA officer. Put me under a gag order. You will not talk about this particular operation to anyone. And you're under a gag order. So I said, okay, what am I gagged by? Well, we can't tell you. It's too sensitive. So they told me that for 2 years. I didn't know what I was gagged by. I just walked around gagged, not knowing what I was gagged by. We finally got it out of them. Does this look familiar? There it is. The gag order covering up an operation really involved the near death of a young family. Nothing classified at all. But they used an MO that's been in place, can be abused by any official that gets in that program. They can do this with impunity, and no one can stop them. Now, in a constitutional government elected by the people, is this sort of thing correct? But I said, no, absolutely not. They're doing this with impunity. This is the settlement agreement. The judge, my evidence is so strong, the judge ordered them to go to settlement. We settled, for a pittance really of what it should have been. Essentially, my wife was almost terminally ill, so was my son, from a poisoning. And the evidence was so strong, the judge ordered them to a mediated settlement. You will settle, you will settle. Now, everybody signed the document, including the CIA, and then they did this. They said, no, we're not going to abide by that. We said, it's a legal document. They said, you accept a lower settlement, or we're going to invoke the state secrets privilege if you don't, and we're going to seal your case forever, and no one's ever going to see those doctors' diagnosis or anything. That's exactly what they did. Not even our congressman can get in and see the environmental reports and the doctor's diagnosis. So I have seen this personally. And this is kind of where my mission started, was right here when I began to see how this beast operated. They sealed all the evidence from Congress. They blocked my retirement funds, which is a felony. I had to remind them of that. Pardon me, but this is a felony. You can't do this. But they did. They raised the interest rates on all of my credit union loans to make them unaffordable. Yeah, this is what they do. That's why you don't see many whistleblowers out there. I don't like that term anyway, but you don't see many whistleblowers because they have a system that does this. IGs, Department of Justice IG, the IG report just came out. You know about that. We'll talk a little bit about that. IGs, I told my wife Sue when the IG report started, don't expect anything big from the DOJ IG because these people are DOJ careerists. They work within the DOJ. In the case of the CIA IG, who I sent my case to and all the evidence, they were agency employees. They blocked it. They destroyed documents from the cable system. And I had a former IG official, I was a program manager, we had an offsite, sat down and said, I was with the IG and they destroyed your documents, covered up your cases. They were so terrified what they were doing was going to get out in public. So these are agency careers. You think they're going to really, same with the DOJ, issue a report that's going to hammer the FBI or Hillary Clinton for felonies? No, and that didn't happen. No surprise. So I've seen this stuff personally. This is from the Company of Shadows, Chapter 25, which I got more stuff out of that book than I frankly thought I would. A lot. It was quite surprising. But what they blacked out was this. These are doctors' diagnoses. This is the environmental report I had done that said there were poisons in the house. This was a break-in that happened to our house. None of this is classified at all. None of this is a source or a method. None of it has anything to do with intelligence whatsoever. It is illegal for any intelligence agency to black out information simply because it's embarrassing. That's a Ronald Reagan executive order. But they did it with impunity. Now, I'm out speaking now. We're getting the shadow government, so too soon. That's, you reap what you sow, I guess. But that's what they do. And that's what the shadow, we are witnessing weaponized intelligence. I'll get into some detail here that some of you are probably going to relate to regarding the shadow government. The entire intelligence system has been and is now arrayed against the presidency of Donald Trump for his removal. They've already done a character assassination. That's complete. Now they're trying to push for impeachment. There is no obstruction of justice That's a media meme or whatever you want to call it, but they're pushing that because they want to get rid of this guy. But the chilling part of it is this. Anybody remember Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's quote on Rachel Maddow's show? where he said this: if you cross the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. He's talking about the President of the United States. Now just think about that for a second. That's chilling. If you, the President, cross the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA, they're going to get you. That's what he's saying. In a constitutional government, that's how serious this has gotten. The only time that this has happened before in history was Allen Dulles against John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy fired Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles created a secret cabal of senior CIA officers. Allen Dulles, by the way, was connected into the Third Reich, was close to some of the members of the Third Reich, and smuggled Germans in as CIA scientists. He was really a bad guy. Despised John F. Kennedy. After Kennedy was assassinated, look this up, it's all out there. After Kennedy was assassinated, guess who they put in charge of the Warren Commission? Allen Dulles, who called and decided who the CIA witnesses were going to be, and what they were going to say, and what they were. He controlled the entire hearing. So this sort of conflict between a president and the shadow government intelligence agency hasn't happened since then. We're seeing that right now. And I think, well, we know now that a lot of, even the staff members in the White House are getting protective details, so this got real bad. I mean, if they had the chance to take Donald Trump out physically, trust me, they would do it. Sadly. So it's kind of hard to read that red there. Whatever you think about Donald Trump, now he's out of the box. He's doing stuff that we used to dream about, pulling out of the UN and some of the crazy things they're doing that we're paying for, the secret TPP. They didn't tell us what they were, and on and on and on. This is good stuff. So he's doing stuff that a lot of people have been waiting for 20 years, but that he is out of the box. They can't control him. They can't control him financially. He tweets things that sometimes we go, man, I wish we would have done that. They can't stop that. He's writing all these executive orders and stopping all these things. They can't stop that. He's been looking into the CIA. He's been busting the NSA. You can see the conflict with the FBI now. They're terrified of Donald Trump because he is not controllable. So whether you love him, hate him, or he's your buddy or not, whatever, they're afraid of him. They can't control. I know I was in there. It is all about control in the shadow government. That is what it's all about. I talked about the shadow government against our elected government. The CIA, specifically Mr. Director John Brennan, broke into the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence computers on Capitol Hill and spied on the torture report. Anybody hear about that? Spied on the U.S. Senate. Do you know what that is? That's a felony. Multiple felonies. Was he indicted? Did he get in trouble? Did he get a pay cut? Did anything happen?
He got a promotion.
He got a promotion, and now he's making, what, 6 figures with MSNBC as a correspondent, pounding on Trump all the time. Nothing happened. Hacked into the Senate computers inside the United States, the CIA did, and they got away with it. Am I down with the CIA? We need good intelligence. I don't like what it's become, because it's become a monster. And it needs to be reined back in. What did John Brennan do? This is typical shadow government family. They said, Mr. Brennan, you broke into Senate computers. That's illegal. And his response was, the stuff on those computers was classified CIA information, and you could go to jail for accessing it. That's what he did. That's what he came back with. That's what they do. The NSA spied on Congress. The NSA tapped into conversation between Congress and Netanyahu in Israel about the Iran nuclear deal. Tapped into congressional phone calls. Constitutional problem? Illegal problem? Yeah, but they're doing this stuff. And the reason I'm doing this is because most people don't know that this is going on, but it is. And in a constitutional government, we got to do something about this somehow. And this is where we start, right here. And it goes on. The FBI, we know, they spied on the Trump campaign. National Security Advisor created a spreadsheet with hundreds of Americans' names unmasked in NSA surveillance. Samantha Powers, unmasked. This is the UN ambassador. Samantha Powers was the UN ambassador. Unmasked over 260 names from NSA surveillance of Americans. What the heck is the UN ambassador doing unmasking NSA surveillance names? The UN ambassador? So she got grilled by Congress and she said, well, it wasn't me. Someone used my name to do it. Now I know from the inside, you don't just walk in and say, I'm Susan Powers, and I look at all the NSA surveillance. You got a badge, you got a password, you got access, and you were grilled all the way into that skiff. She lied and got away with it. Just walked. Nothing happened. The FBI is still withholding Fusion GPS documents, more on that later. They're refusing to turn over FBI Clinton email, and the Russia FISA reports are still refusing to turn that over from their bosses, the intelligence committees. And what did the FBI, Rosenstein, however you want to pronounce it, what did Rosenstein do when Nunes said, listen, if you don't give us this information by last Wednesday, I think it was, we're going to have you impeached. So when Stein came back and said, oh yeah? Well, the FBI is going to open an investigation on Congress, and we're going to start subpoenaing Congress. If you can imagine that, the intelligence committees are their boss. The FBI is now threatening Congress that it's got the nerve to open up a congressional investigation or an FBI investigation on Congress. What is wrong with that picture? They are out of control, man. Big time. No doubt about it. That's going on right now. Clapper and Brennan leaked the dossier to the media, more on that later, called it intelligence when it was not. They lied directly, and this is weird. Clapper and Brennan, some of you may know what an amicus brief is. There are 3 DNC employees. You heard about the lawsuit against the Trump campaign? 3 DNC employees have filed a lawsuit against the Trump campaign claiming that they were defamed because the Trump campaign hacked into the DNC emails. And we all know that that was a hack. And Bill Binney, a friend of mine, former NSA manager, did a study and found out that that stuff was downloaded on a thumb drive and removed. It was not hacked. They traced the addresses and everything, got proof of it. So there was no hacking to begin with. But what Clapper and Brennan have done is filed an amicus brief saying, we agree with these 3 DNC employees. We agree that it was hacked, and we agree that the Trump campaign should be sued, and they know darn well that's not happening. Now, why would 2 former directors of the CIA do something like that, knowing that it's false, trying to bring down a sitting president? Shadow government. Does that sound like a conspiracy theory? No. This is fact. I wish it was. We all know, I'll get into this in detail, James Comey protected Clinton from prosecution. I will show you that he committed multiple violations of Title 18 U.S. Code. He committed a couple felonies in doing that. And what I'm doing at the end of this lecture is I am publicly requesting that Sessions, if he sticks around, prosecute some of these people. Because these are high-level government officials that have committed felonies. And things need to change. They need to be held accountable. Now we're going to get into the meat. The dead fish of the subject. The fish wrapped in paper subject. All the study and research that I've done over the last 5 years on the shadow government, the deep state, and international crime has gone back to one person. Every single time. And if you look at this, the number of people that were protecting Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State and when she was running for office that protected her, Christopher Steele, MI6, John Brennan, director of the CIA, leaked information wide and started a soft coup against Donald Trump to protect this lady. Why would he do that? James Clapper did the same thing. Leaked information claiming the dossier was real when it was fake. He's now out pounding on Clinton as an anchor for CNN, of all things. Why are they protecting Hillary Clinton? And there's more. James Comey committed felonies, obstruction of justice, obstruction of a criminal investigation, and covering over her espionage use of this secret server. More on that later. Why would he do that? I'll show you. I'll show you the connection. It's going to blow your mind how these people are connected. Peter Strzok testified in Congress yesterday. He told Congress that what he had to say was too classified, and he couldn't talk about it. That's literally what he said. He didn't answer their questions. See a pattern there? Yeah. Protecting Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice, unmasked names in NSA, Samantha Powers, 260 names unmasked in the Trump campaign. GCHQ, British intelligence, was right in there doing this against Trump. On behalf of this lady, what the heck? What kind of power does this woman have over these high-level government officials? And let me tell you, it's going to get worse. What the heck is going on? And then there's one thing worth noting. This is called the Presidential Daily Brief. When I was on the director's staff, one of our roles was to protect that thing when it got delivered to the president and cabinet. The president's daily brief goes to the president every day, and it's an update on the latest intelligence issues, the big ones, in the United States. If the Trump campaign is being spied on by the Russians, then it would have gone in, and it did go into the Presidential Daily Brief, which went directly to Barack Obama, and he read and he knew about all this. Period. That's the law. It's a regulation, how the system works. It goes all the way in. They use the power of the National Security Agency to spy again on U.S. citizens. Again, violation of the Fourth Amendment, what is that? It's a felony. It's multiple felonies in this case. They use the incredible power of the NSA to spy again, not just on the American people, but on a presidential opponent, an election opponent. If you can imagine, this is going to get worse. There's more coming out. This is the biggest scandal in U.S. history, maybe in Western history, that is happening and is unfolding right here. But there are some heroes in this. I think he's unsung. I don't think many people know. Anybody know about Admiral Mike Rogers' role in this? There are some good guys. Admiral Rogers was doing an audit inside the NSA. And he found high-level NSA employees and some British, I think they're MI6ers, that were sitting down and unmasking members of the Trump campaign. So what Admiral Rogers did was he went straight to the Trump campaign and sat down and said, Mr. President, my own NSA is spying on you, and I want you to know about it. He did this at his own personal expense because Barack Obama fired him immediately after that. And he remains, in my view, one of the unsung heroes of this whole. You don't hear much about him anymore. He just walked off into, I guess, after his career, like a real hero. And this guy deserves a lot. He deserves a Presidential Medal of Freedom, in my opinion. I hope he gets it. So there are some good guys in this. And there are some bad guys up to in the upper left, for example. Anyway, so the NSA now, just so you know, has created what they're calling the IC Gov cloud. Anybody heard about that? Yeah, some of you are wincing out there. You know what a cloud is. It's an internet that just kind of hangs out there. Well, the NSA now is moving all data to this cloud. They're taking all the data that was at the Utah data center on us, stored on these massive computers, and they're moving it to the cloud. What does that mean? Outside of U.S. jurisdiction and outside of U.S. law. And it gets worse. They have tripled their data collection on us. It has multiplied 3 times since their so-called reform. This data cloud was created by who? The people you get your package from in 2 days. Amazon entered into a $600 million contract with the CIA to create this cloud, which means everybody in Amazon, including Jeff Bezos, signed the CIA secrecy agreement, and they're bound by life, for life, by that secrecy agreement, and he can never talk about what the CIA does or NSA with this cloud. So now they're doing this together. And the NSA has come out and said, well, what we're doing now, it's called traffic shaping. What traffic shaping is, NSA has taken its data collections from CONUS, the United States, internal United States, and they moved it to hubs outside the US, in the UK, for example. So now they come in and they collect information on you and me, but it goes back and is stored in the United Kingdom and other places, and it's not bound by US constitutional law. And they keep doing it with impunity. All this information, thanks to Barack Obama, his last 2 weeks in office, all this information on you and me and our cell phones and our texts, goes to all other 16 intelligence agencies. It's spread all over the shadow government, whatever the NSA collects that it likes on any one of us. And, go back here, because this next slide is a bombshell. They are, through this human cloud and Amazon and NSA, they are using artificial intelligence to create human behavior profiles on all of us in the cloud. So they can look down and monitor your and my behavior and decide whether we're a threat or not, and store all of our shopping behavior, driver's license, DMV records, what sort of traffic tickets we have, electronic pocket litter they call it, and they store it, and then they look at you and I and they decide whether we're a threat or not. That's going to be part of this NSA, is a part of this NSA cloud that they're doing. Now we need to know that this exists. It's a monster, it's a monolith. We're not saying that an intelligence agency is bad, we need one, but we're saying this kind is out of control. And it's just getting worse. I said the other day on my Twitter, Big Brother is now an adult, and someone wrote back and said, no, he's not an adult, he's married and has children. Good point. Now, I want to get back to this, because this is where we're headed, as we're getting kind of 2/3 of the way through here. Get back to this again. This guy, Bill Clinton, it wasn't just about the blue dress, as nasty as that was. Bill Clinton sold sensitive National Reconnaissance Office, Department of Defense satellite technology to the Chinese. Gave it to them. Top secret SCI satellite technology he gave to the Chinese. In his second term in office, the Chinese government pumped several $1 million into his re-election. Is there an espionage problem with that? Yeah. But what they got him on a blue dress? Please, what the heck happened with all of this? He got away with it. Why? The shadow government is that deep and controls the elected government that much, he got away with it. He was linked directly to the CIA from the start, going back to the governor of Arkansas when he was governor. And the Iran-Contra was going on. I was there then. Iran-Contra was going on, and they were landing jets in Mena, Arkansas at the airport, right? Connected to Iran-Contra, which means, just based on my knowledge on how things work, Governor Clinton had to have a shadow government clearance to do that, connected to the CIA and George Bush Sr. and what they were doing in that operation, which means going way, 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 way back to Arkansas, Bill Clinton was connected to the shadow government. Even worse, Hillary Clinton got a top secret CIA clearance when she was First Lady, which is illegal. She has been connected deeply to the shadow government, to the CIA and CIA operation, ever since they first got in the White House. For now, going back to Arkansas, for 30 years, this woman has been building her network, both within the intelligence sectors of our government, the deep state internationally through the Clinton Foundation, and created the most powerful crime syndicate known to man. And that's why this all goes back to her. I mean, it is, when I'm studying this, it gets nauseating, seriously. I mean, sometimes I have to put it down. It's nauseating, the amount of power here. The Clinton Foundation. And let me give a shout out to Charles Ortel here and Jason Goodman. Jason, do you wave your hand? Jason's live streaming. He's on, has Charles, Sundays with Charles, right, Jason? Is what's called Crowdsource the Truth 2. Charles Ortel, heroically, a financial expert, is splitting the foundation wide open, and there are multiple international felonies. Multiple. It's a fraud. I think he calls it the largest unprosecuted charity fraud in world history, which it is. Created by her and her husband. The Clinton Global Initiative tied in together, and I'm going to get into some detail of the money that flows into these things, and the sheer illegality of it. But look at her connections. Why Alexander Downer, the Australian ambassador to the United States? Mr. Downer gave $24 million of Australian taxpayer money into the Clinton Foundation. The Australian people didn't even know it. All of a sudden, Mr. Downer pops up again in a bar, approaching George Papadopoulos, trying to get him to admit that the Trump campaign had Hillary Clinton emails, which Papadopoulos never did. He just said, well, I heard from somebody else that there were some emails. That's all he said. Downer went back, reported that to Brennan and the CIA. That was one of the reasons they opened up the Russia collusion investigation. What was he doing? Protecting Hillary Clinton. Why? Why? We go on. George Soros contributed $27.1 million into Hillary Clinton's campaign. We all know about George Soros, don't we? His stated goal is to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and eliminate our boundaries. And he just comes right out and says it. He was one of her chief financial contributors. Mohammed Morsi, Muslim Brotherhood. Hillary Clinton was connected to, supportive of, the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood, joined at the hip with Huma Abedin, whose family are members of the Muslim Brotherhood. She got visas for Muslim Brotherhood operatives who came in. They helped Mohammed Morsi take over Egypt, and the Muslim Brotherhood ruled, and they were crucifying Christians outside the gates of their headquarters until the Egyptian people rose up. And one of the most wonderful things I've ever seen, and had a mass rally and kicked them out of office. But she was behind the whole thing. They even had posters. The people, get Hillary out of Egypt, because they knew darn well who was behind this. Sandy Berger. Sandy Berger and Fries. Sandy Berger went into the National Archives. Anybody know about this one? Went into the National Archives, stole top secret information, shoved it down his pants. I think there was several documents, it was 4 or 5 documents. Shoved them down his pants, took them out, and then destroyed them. Only problem with Sandy, he was the national security advisor. Apparently didn't know much about national security because the archives have cameras in there, and they literally caught him walking out shoving these documents down his pants. That is multiple felonies. That's a minimum of 10 years in jail. And he got off. I'll show you who got him off when I show you the pattern here. But he was removing information to protect the Clintons. Why? Turns out it was related to 9/11, pre-9/11. No one knows, but it was the documents we're dealing with pre-9/11 related to the Clintons. That's all we know, because they were destroyed. To protect Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. John Brennan has gone out on the limb and broken the law to protect Hillary Clinton, as I mentioned. James Comey will get into it in detail. A clear obstruction of justice. The DOJ report left this completely alone. We'll talk about that. He's protecting it. Why? One of the reasons, Lockheed Martin was contributing millions of dollars into, guess where? The Clinton Foundation. So Hillary takes care of her own. She got James Comey a membership on the board of directors of Lockheed Martin, where he made $6 million in 1 year. See, the syndicate takes care of itself. I'll show you later on, he's a syndicate member. And it goes on. She ran illegally guns into Benghazi without the knowledge of Congress, using Saudi Arabia and Qatar as a cutout. Those weapons went to the hands of Al-Qaeda, and they're now in the hands of ISIS. Did the U.S. create ISIS? Well, the guns got there indirectly, but ISIS has our guns and tanks through this illegal drug running operation that she was running out of the Department of State. And it just gets worse. I'll get into Uranium One later. This was a Russian intelligence operation specifically targeting Hillary Clinton. And I'll prove it in a moment. We all doing okay? I know this is a lot of stuff. We'll try to get going. And it gets worse. Loretta Lynch protected the investigation, changed her criminal investigation in the documents to a matter to keep it from going down the criminal route. Why? Why the tarmac meeting? Why is she protecting this woman? Why are all these people protecting this woman? What the heck is going on here? You got Peter Strzok. We will stop Trump from being elected. We all know how he twisted the Hillary Clinton interviews. More on that later, to keep her from being prosecuted. The national news media is like a shield for this woman. I mean, not they will leave information out, they will bold-faced lie to protect this lady. Why? I'll show you the Time magazine cover. Many of you have seen that. They downright lie and get away because you know what they're doing. It's propaganda. But why are these people and all these entities protected? You've got Lady Rothschild up there with David Brock. Lady Rothschild is very close to Hillary Clinton. So is David Brock. Media Matters. George Soros is giving funding to CNN and other organizations, supporting them financially to control the U.S. news media. My question is this: what the heck is going on here? What is going on with this woman? Where did she get this kind of power? And these kind of people at all levels of our government, shadow and deep state, protecting this lady from what she deserves, and that's prosecution. How did this lady get this power? How on earth did this, well, you'll see, it is shocking. It's an international crime syndicate that Hillary Clinton has been running and Bill Clinton has been running for 30 years. It is bloodthirsty, it is ruthless, it involves drug running down into Mexico and South America. On my radio program, I had a high-level Mexican official saying that the people don't understand the Clinton Foundation is operating in drugs down in Mexico, and we all know it. It's how bad it is. There's espionage, money laundering, drug running, charity fraud, blackmail, murder, connected to the international world order. Those are Susan Rice's word, Barack Obama. The new international world order. Is there a new world order? There is a global economic world order. Yes. Now you want to call it the world order, whatever. There is. And this Hillary Clinton, I call her the international world order princess, because she's the hub of this whole thing. You search the Constitution, the goal, not only of Hillary and Soros, but the progressivism itself, is to usurp the United States Constitution and eliminate U.S. sovereignty. That's what this lady's all about, folks. That and trillions of dollars. Involves the Democratic National Committee. I hate to say this, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but I got to tell you, the DNC is not the Democratic Party of JFK and our mom and dad anymore. It's a criminal syndicate, and it's largely Marxist. Seriously. It's not the DNC, and a lot of Democrats don't realize that themselves because it's a family lineage thing. It's not the same DNC. You just look at the Fusion GPS scandal. And it involves, as I mentioned, the shadow government. So, what happened with Uranium One? And I want to stress this. There's more to Uranium One than we know. We know this. Robert Mueller, you know, the nice public servant, straight-laced, ethical, super detective, right? The best, cleanest guy that has ever walked the earth? No. Robert Mueller was investigating Russia, criminal acts by Russian nuclear officials at the time Uranium One was going on. He was in charge of the FBI counterintelligence investigation of Russian nuclear officials. He was investigating bribery, extortion, and racketeering by Putin's government, specifically the SVR, in trying to acquire U.S. nuclear fuel. That investigation was going on when Uranium One happened. For some reason, none of us know, Mr. Mueller carried a sample of uranium on behalf of Hillary Clinton to Moscow. It's classified. Nobody knows what the heck he was doing. Why would Robert Mueller, on behalf of the Secretary of State, be carrying uranium to Moscow? We understand Putin was directly involved in some of this. The Russian collusion investigation is a smokescreen for what was really going on. I'll show you that later. He approved, amongst others, the other 8 members, the sale of uranium, even though he knew this espionage activity was going on. I'm telling you, this man needs to be held accountable for this. This is serious. This is a serious threat to national security that this guy let happen. The question, once again, is why? Because this was involving the Clinton Foundation. He ignored the national security threat. Russian nuclear officials routed millions of dollars into, guess what? The Clinton Foundation. I think it was $145 million. Rosatom and other Russian nuclear officials routed into the Clinton Foundation to get the uranium-1 deal going. It was a Russian intelligence operation targeting the Clintons, hands down. The uranium-1 chairman contributed $2.3 million into, guess what? The Clinton Foundation, the Clinton crime syndicate. These are Russian nuclear intelligence officials contributing into the Clinton Foundation while she was Secretary of State. How the heck can someone get away with it? Well, she did. Shadow government, connections, on and on we go. It's that bad, but it gets even worse than that. The Russian investment company that owned uranium-1 stock, its major owner, were the ones that invited Bill Clinton for a speech for which they paid him $500,000 to speak to a Russian uranium-1 stock holding company. Does anybody smell a dead rat or forget? I mean, it becomes so obvious, like, how could they miss this? Well, they missed it intentionally. Okay, here we go with some other stuff. There we go. Here's the secret of uranium-1. That I haven't heard this in the press. Maybe I thought I may have missed it. Hillary Rodham Clinton formed the equivalent of an international super PAC with all these foreign contributions coming in to the Clinton Foundation through Russian officials, Saudi Arabia and others, but in this case, Russian officials. She formed an international super PAC routing millions of dollars into her presidential campaign. Evil, but brilliant. How did she do it? Well, if these are foreign contributions, then, and they were in offshore accounts, they're not bound by U.S. law, are they? So they're outside of U.S. law, which means no one can get the information on these donations. They're not subject to congressional subpoenas because it's foreign money, offshore accounts in foreign countries. They're also not subject to Freedom of Information Act laws. If Judicial Watch, which is an outstanding organization, I encourage everybody to contribute to them, filed the Freedom of Information Act law to get the information on these donations. They couldn't do it. They're out in foreign countries. She circumvented FOIA laws on this information. She circumvented congressional subpoenas, and she got about $4 billion into her campaign through uranium-1. That's what it was about. Concealed it completely from Congress. Got away with it. So $2 billion in the Clinton campaign over 4 years, that helped. It should have helped her get elected if it wasn't for the revolution that we saw in this country, man. And that's what it was. It was a revolution of the people, man. Or both. Stop this from happening. I just want to stress the power that this woman specifically has over all these government agencies and all these international entities. It's bad. Anybody heard Buzz Patterson speak? He held the nuclear codes for Bill Clinton. You ought to, if you get a chance. He carried the nuclear football for Bill Clinton. Wrote dereliction of duty. That's probably Buzz there. Buzz Patterson witnesses Bill Clinton lost the nuclear codes for over 3 months. Didn't know where they were. Couldn't find them. They had to issue. They couldn't have been more than 3 months. What did he call Hillary? They asked Buzz. He worked with Hillary, and Hillary was a really nasty lady. She would take books and hit the Secret Service agents in the back of the head driving the vehicle. And somebody asked, we did a speech at the same place Buzz was, and they said, well, was it Major Patterson? Well, what would be your opinion of Hillary Rodham Clinton? Quote, she's an evil, vindictive bitch. Unquote. This is the guy that hung around right next to them, you know. So I can't think of a better way to say it. All right, we'll get back into the what the heck realm here. Okay, and we're probably getting close to two-thirds of the way through, so hang with me. The hidden server. This is what is bizarre about this. All State Department business was done by Hillary Clinton outside of the government on this secret server. Why? Is she that stupid? No, she's not stupid. She's an evil genius, basically. She knew darn well. Why was she doing this? What was she hiding? It was unsecure. You know, now it's happening by probably 4 intelligence services, China and Russia, being at the top. and there was some satellite imagery and some top secret stuff on there that got out and they got in the hands. She hid all of her Department of State work from Congress. Why did she do that? Now we know that Barack Obama was corresponding with her on this unsecured server using a fake name, so he knew about it. Why? What were they doing? It blows your mind. It was hacked, we know that, no question about it. So what did she do when the FBI opened its so-called investigation? She destroyed 30,000 subpoenaed emails, wiped her hard drives with bleach bit, and smashed the BlackBerries. That is clear Title 18 obstruction of justice. Was she ever charged? No. Did anything happen? No. They just said extreme carelessness, or whatever they call it. No, she got away with it. Completely erase that, and we'll get into Comey's part of this. It's just shocking. I'm going to show you the connection between James Comey, Loretta Lynch, and Robert Mueller with Hillary Clinton going back almost 30 years. It's a little cabal. All right. Hillary lied to the FBI on multiple occasions. Well, I didn't know it was wrong to have a server outside the Department of State. I thought the word C for confidential meant A, B, and C. You know, if you're that stupid, what are you doing being the Secretary of State, for goodness sake? So was she arrested for lying to investigators? No. They let her go. And it got worse than that. What just happened? Anybody been reading the news lately about Anthony Weiner's laptop? The NYPD finally released what they had. They have 700,000 emails that Anthony Weiner saved in a file called insurance policy. So those 700,000 emails are everything that Hillary wiped off her servers, that Weiner stored. And in case they tried to go after him, he was going to release all that. The FBI has it. They've had it since Weiner was originally charged. And James Comey sat on it and wouldn't let the FBI investigate these 700,000 emails that they've had now for a couple of years. It was so bad that an FBI agent in New York said, that knew about these emails, he said, what the heck is going on at FBI headquarters? And he complained and said, right, there's 700,000 emails that we turned over to you. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Well, that's the director's decision. You just stay out of it. So one James Comey sat on these and concealed those from Congress. All of Hillary's, even including on her BlackBerries, the stuff came off her BlackBerries. All from Weiner's computer. And we won't know what's on there until Congress gets their hands on those. But that shows you how bad this has gotten. I was a counterintelligence officer in the CIA. This would have been the big dog for us. This is a major espionage case here. Major. As bad as it gets. And yet nothing was done. How can that happen? Especially in a so-called constitutional government. So the FBI did an investigation, supposedly. Most of you know about this. It's pretty painful. But let's walk through it. Peter Strzok, they put in charge of both investigations. He was in charge of Michael Flynn's investigation. Michael Flynn did not lie, but they caught him on lying to investigators. He was in charge of Hillary Clinton's secret server investigation, and he was in charge of the Trump-Russia collusion investigation. And we know now that he was blocking Hillary from getting charged. So, amplified the Trump-Russia collusion investigation big time, and then minimized, basically let Hillary off. Trump had done nothing, Hillary had done everything. And more. Comey wrote an exoneration memo, as some of you may know. He wrote an exoneration memo for Hillary before she was even interviewed by the FBI. We found that she's committed no crime, and there's been gross carelessness, and that's about it. But that was written before they even interviewed Hillary Clinton. Obstruction of justice, Title 18. Loretta Lynch changed the criminal investigation to a matter, taking it out of the criminal realm and out of the prosecutorial realm. This is the chief law enforcement officer of the land doing this. Again, felony. Violation of the criminal statute. Comey and Strzok changed the wording in their memo about the Hillary Clinton investigation from gross negligence, that's a criminal term, minimum 10 years in jail, could be as much as 20. Gross negligence. Was it gross negligence, the secret server? Heck yeah. Intentional negligence, I think it'd be a better word. But they changed it in the wording to extremely careless. So extremely careless takes it out of the criminal realm and puts it into the doofus realm. So she's not prosecuted. They knew exactly what they were doing. They're lawyers. In her interview, the FBI took no notes, and they did not put her under oath, so there's no record of what she said. Intentionally. None. They were ordered not to take notes. and they ignored lying to investigators, repeated lies she told, they just overlooked them. It was an obstruction of justice, and it was obstruction of a criminal investigation by the FBI itself. There's absolutely no question about that. We'll prove it even more. So, Donald Trump wins the election. They didn't expect that. Hillary, the international world order princess, with billions in her fund from all these cabals that had donated into the campaign, they thought she was a shoo-in. And all of a sudden, this incredible event happened, and Donald Trump was elected. So they kicked into gear, knowing that they conspired with Russia with Uranium-1, committed espionage, knowing that Hillary had used her server with Uranium-1 and the Clinton Foundation involving Russia. They kicked in their cover campaign. First thing they did, they forced Jeff Sessions to recuse himself from the Russian investigation. I am still mad at him for that. Because once Sessions recused himself, that turned it over to the hands of the FBI and James Comey and Rosenstein and McCabe and the rest of them. I mean, what was he thinking? I was giving him the benefit of the doubt because I used to work with the FBI and they plod along in their case. I'm not doing that anymore. I mean, humbly, Trump's got to do something with Jeff Sessions. He does. This is beyond me. Why is Sessions not doing anything with a clear criminal case? I mean, we can just conjecture. What's he afraid of? I understand he's afraid his office is bugged. What's he afraid of? Do they have something on him? Or is he just dumb as a paddle? I mean, who knows? What the heck? This is a criminal act. Clear proof. I don't understand it. I think he needs to go personally. Place it in the FBI's hands, and it went bad from then. They criminally leaked Flynn's conversation, which was not illegal. The national security team corresponds with the Russians all the time, and everybody knows it's taped. It's the worst kept secret in Washington. We knew that. You ever talk to any Russian in any operation, embassy? It's all taped. That's what we do. So that was no surprise. What Flynn did was just engage in the business of his operation, and he did not lie to investigate. They came back 2 months later, as they do, and he flubbed up on his memory on a certain case, and they caught him with lying to investigators and charged him when he had done nothing wrong, at least in my view. So what do they do next? We got to stop this because Trump's elected, and our whole Russian operation may be exposed. So they hit Devin Nunes with ethics charges. It was a smokescreen. Now, Chairman Nunes went through it nobly, and he was exonerated of all charges. But they did that on purpose to cover up what they knew was hiding under the lid of the pot, these connections to Russia. And they did it again. Another counter coup. They placed an anti-Trump agent in charge of the investigation, being Peter Strzok, knowing that he hated Trump, knowing that he wanted to stop Trump, knowing that he let Clinton go. That's the person that they charged to do the Trump-Russia collusion investigation. Of all people. You think that was an accident? Heck no. Rosenstein, sadly, was given the authority to appoint Robert Mueller as a special counsel. I showed you the document that lays out the special counsel's authority, didn't I? The one that's blacked out, nobody knows about. And allowed Robert Mueller to completely depart from special counsel guidelines completely. Now he's off arresting people for things that have absolutely nothing to do with Russia collusion. He appointed Andrew Weissman, the bulldog, the one that ruined Arthur Anderson, the jobs of 80,000 employees. The Supreme Court ruled that Weissman had withheld evidence in the case and threw it out. He's now in charge of the Trump investigation for Mueller. Alexander Downer, they had him out there already setting up Papadopoulos in this operation to make it look like Trump had colluded with the Russians and had Hillary's emails. All false, all a setup. This is how they started the Russian collusion investigation, through a counter-operation. And they planted, as we know now, a Cambridge professor, shame on him, and a couple of others as moles in the Clinton campaign. We know Stephen Halpern, I believe his name is a CIA asset going all the way back to the Ford administration and working for the CIA. We now know also that 2 of the so-called counterintelligence FBI agents in this case were not counterintelligence agents at all. They were lawyers. That's a felony. When we did counterintelligence cases, you had to be a counterintelligence officer to have the authority to do that. These were not. They were FBI attorneys that they planted in the Trump campaign, and that is a felony. Anybody happy yet? No. We're having dinner later. I just keep thinking of that. So we got to talk about this, and I'll go through it real quickly. The Russian dossier. Now, they picked the name dossier because it sounds better than pile of papers or file. So dossier makes it sound real, which it was not. It's a fake. I could go off on this for a long time. We'll just hit the highlights of it. The dossier information allegedly on Donald Trump was obtained from Russian intelligence officers. That's where Christopher Steele got his information from. Russian intelligence. Are you getting that? Russian intelligence influenced the U.S. election not in Trump's favor, against Trump. That's what they didn't want people to know. Russian intelligence. McCain acted as a courier, sent an emissary to pick up Steele's dossier and bring it back and disseminate it to the CIA and the FBI, where John Brennan leaked it to the press and called it intelligence when it was a bunch of baloney. And the FBI took that information in the dossier, filed false affidavits to allow the NSA to spy on a political opponent. That's how bad it is. But it's even worse than that. That's how bad this is. CIA leaked it to the press. Now, if any of us in the CIA ever leaked anything to the press, we'd be in jail. That was an anathema. You go to your next polygraph test and you're a toast. You don't do that, and yet the director did. NSA conducted their surveillance. This entire thing was the nexus of the appointment of Robert Mueller as the special counsel. If none of this had happened, he wouldn't be there. Is there a problem with his appointment here? Darn right there is. And yet he continues on. The CIA and the FBI colluded in a soft coup against the Trump campaign, against a elected electoral candidate, presidential candidate, and against the sitting president. A soft coup by the shadow government and the intelligence agencies against the sitting president of the United States. That's how bad this is. Never happened before in the history of this country, most Western countries. The FBI is still withholding documents. As I mentioned earlier, the FBI is now threatening Chairman Nunes and their boss, the intelligence community. If you don't stop this asking for documents, we're going to open an investigation on Congress and subpoena congressmen. But that's how arrogant these people have gotten. So, I want to talk about this because this is how they do it. So there's no evidence of collusion, none so far, right? So what does Mueller do? Well, he starts using the same old FBI tactic they used on Martha Stewart. Remember Martha Stewart? They couldn't find any evidence of her doing any insider training at all. In other words, they couldn't find evidence of the crime. So what did they charge her with? Lying to investigators. Put her in jail for 2 years. And then a moderate security facility for 2 years for lying to investigators. Well, so Mueller can't find anything on Russia. So what does he hit Flynn with? Making false statements to the FBI. A felon. What does he hit Manafort with? 12 counts, including, of course, false statements. What does he hit Gates with? Federal conspiracy, which they haven't proven yet, and making false statements to the FBI. What they can do, and what they are doing, is they will take this felony and they'll roll it over and say, if you flip on Trump or you flip on Gates or Manafort or anybody else, we'll drop the lying to investigators charge and maybe give you a 6 months prison sentence or house arrest. Well, we got you on lying to investigators, that's a felony, so what do you know? That's what he's doing. That's an old FBI trick. False statements. Papadopoulos, Alexander Downer, met him in a bar. Papadopoulos didn't give him anything about Russian collusion, nothing. And yet they got Papadopoulos, a young guy, kind of wet behind the ears. They caught him making 2 statements, which he couldn't remember what he said before, so what did they hit him with? Lying to investigators, making false statements. Ironically, along comes Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe lies to the FBI and the OIG 4 times. 2 times under oath. What do they hit their own with? The FBI? They hit him with lack of candor. Instead of lying to investigators where they nailed everybody, it was just lack of candor. And they tried to let him go, tried to get him off. He did even worse than these other people did. Shadow government. Working our way through here until we get to the actual felonies. The Cohen raid, and this is long, but I just want to hit the high points. They went in, the FBI went in, broke in there in his office, his home, and his hotel room, and took into their custody years of information on his interaction with Donald Trump, including attorney-client privileged information. That is a felony. It's a violation of the 4th Amendment. Clearly, they did it. What they're claiming is, well, we have mechanisms in place within the FBI to protect attorney-client information, so we'll make sure that none of that comes out in the case. Do we trust them to do that? No. Should they have it in the first place? No. It was a felony for them to get that stuff in the first place. Have they gotten away with it? Yes, they have, with impunity. It's already in their hands. They already have it. So what Mueller, you could call him a snake, I guess, maybe. What he did, he's not stupid, he turned this entire Cohen case over to the Southern District of New York. And that was purposely done. Because now that the SDNY has it, the case can never be closed. It has to proceed. If Mueller is fired, this charges continue in this case, because it's now in the Southern District of New York's hands, and if Mueller gets fired, the case proceeds against Cohen, and he knew exactly what he was doing. So, as a former, humble, meek, mild, recovering counterintelligence officer, there are some concerns here. Anybody kind of maybe see that? Yes. Secretary of State engaged in the Clinton Foundation for global connections and foreign donations. She had a secret server hidden from Congress, contained top secret information. Foreign agents accessed that information. How bad can it get? She destroyed subpoenaed information. She has connections, direct connections to the Muslim Brotherhood. She and Obama, Barack Obama, ensured that 5 active members of the Muslim Brotherhood were put in national security positions in Washington. 5. And they were there until Obama left office. 5 high-level national security positions, Muslim Brotherhood operatives appointed by Barack Obama and the support of Hillary Clinton. That's called subversion. The FBI, we know that from some of the FBI texts and cables that they had moles. They call them Oconus lures. Those are agents overseas that are luring people into traps like Papadopoulos. And they've now just recently uncovered that in some of their texts and some of their emails. So, now I want to show you the connections, and we're getting ready to wrap this up here. We've got 3 players here that seem to be connected going all the way back to the late 80s, early 90s. And why are these people that I just showed you protecting this woman, Hillary Clinton? You can call her Jezebel. Why are they doing this? And if you look at these 3 here, let me show you some past activity. At the top, we got James Comey. They were investigating the Clinton Foundation fraud and felonies, of which Charles O'Tell does such a great job. It was James Comey who was investigating the Clinton Foundation felonies and fraud and let them go. Didn't file any charges. Guess who else was part of that investigation? Robert Mueller. Guess who else was part of that investigation? Loretta Lynch. All 3 of them were investigating the Clinton Foundation, and there are obvious frauds and felonies out there, obvious ones. And all 3 of them covered them up and did not charge her or Bill Clinton for international fraud. The 3 of them. Where else are they connected? HRC secret server. We know that James Comey obstructed justice and kept her from being prosecuted, right? No doubt about that. He was involved in that. So was Loretta Lynch. She was also involved in keeping Hillary Clinton from being criminally prosecuted. James Comey, anybody know the HSBC Global Bank affair? Anybody out there? HSBC Global Bank is one of the largest banks in the world. They were caught laundering money from 2 major drug cartels coming out of Mexico and South America. Biggest money laundering drug cartel case in U.S. history. Guess who sat on their board of directors? James Comey. None of their board of directors were prosecuted for gross felonies, money laundering, because guess who was in charge of the FBI at the time investigating HSBC and James Comey's role? His best friend, Robert Mueller. Guess who else was involved? Their best buddy, Loretta Lynch. And no one was prosecuted for the biggest money laundering drug cartel operation in history, because Robert Mueller and Loretta Lynch covered it up in conjunction with James Comey. These people should be in jail. Seriously. And that is not an understatement. Let's go on to some more. Sandy Berger committed a felony, removed top secret documents from the National Archives. That's probably 20 years in jail minimum. Guess who investigated Sandy Berger, who was protecting the Clintons? James Comey, Robert Mueller. And Sandy Berger got off without any felony charges. Misdemeanor, $50,000 fine, retained his security clearance. And they let him go. And these are the people that were protecting the Clintons by protecting Sandy Berger, because he knew why he was removing that information for Bill and Hillary. Whitewater. Guess who was on the prosecutorial panel of Hillary Clinton back in Whitewater? Her old buddy, James Comey. One of the members of the syndicate that goes all the way back to them. Guess who else? Robert Mueller. We've seen some faces pop up here again and again and again. Guess who else? Loretta Lynch. All 3 of them were in charge of the exoneration of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton for one of the biggest real estate frauds in history, clearly proven. These 3 chose not to prosecute Hillary. All three of them were involved in the investigation. The dossier, the false dossier and the illegal NSA surveillance. James Comey was part of it. Guess who else? Robert Mueller was a part of that, letting Hillary Clinton off. Guess who else? Are we seeing a pattern here? Loretta Lynch. The same three pop up again in this criminal syndicate that they've been involved in going back almost 30 years in protecting this woman down there in the right for some reason. Blackmail, money, crime syndicate, or all of those. Uranium One, Robert Mueller covered up the counterintelligence investigation of a clear Russian operation. That guy should be in jail for that alone right there. We lost 20% of our uranium. Well, it never left the United States. Baloney, it went to Asia. That was a lie. It left the United States and it went to Asia. We don't know where in Asia, but we know it went to Asia. That's a big place. This is a criminal conspiracy by any definition. By any legal definition, this is a criminal conspiracy involving 4 people every single time. The same 3 people protecting the same criminal agent, Hillary Clinton. You can Google this. This is all out there in open source. It's all out there in the internet, in the libraries. It's right there. What I've done is humbly tried to take a lot of complex information and put it right out there where you can put the dots together and see what the heck is going on. It's pretty bad. I have to put this in as we go into the felonies that these people committed, and I wrap it up. I have to put this in there because there's something even worse here. Not only have they destroyed our constitutional government, destroyed it. We're in a post-constitutional government now, sadly. We want it back. But we're in a post-constitutional government. But there's more than that. They are destroying the very fabric and foundation of our country, what we believe and who we are. Like this. Progressivism, of which she is the progressive princess, if you read the progressive doctrine, they believe that the Constitution is an old, outdated document, that it should be changed, modernized. They believe the First Amendment should be rewritten. They believe the Founding Fathers were a bunch of bigots who were behind the times. They believe that the Declaration of Independence should be eliminated and it's inaccurate. And they believe that the Constitution should be changed and government should have more of a more powerful role in the lives of Americans. That's what she believes. That's what progressives believe. She comes from, as some of you know, her philosophy from Saul Alinsky, who was an avowed Marxist. That was her mentor. She said it herself. Alinsky made the bizarre claim in his writings that, in his opinion, kind of the heroic figure, the most heroic historical figure of radicalism and overtaking of government was Lucifer. Read his writings. That was the ultimate rebel in the case of Marxism and radical ideology. There's a lot of occult activity. If you read, there's a wonderful book I endorsed out there called Killing Uncle Sam. If you read that, Rodney Howard-Browne and Paul Williams trace essentially the New World Order all the way up into this, and it will blow your mind. I think there's over 2,000 references in there. That's why I endorsed it. It's called Killing Uncle Sam. You really need to read that. It gets into a lot of this. This one here, I'm not a politician, I'm not a culturalist, but she believes and is pushing in the UN, the Population Control Council, abortion of unborn babies up to the 9th month of pregnancy. This is an unborn baby at the 9th month. Well, you're pro-life. No, I have a conscience. How on earth could any human being promote birthing a 9-month-old baby when his head comes out, slicing its spine with a scalpel? That's not pro-life. That's not pro-choice. My God, that's crazy. Well, she's a big promoter of that. And people who follow her on that are falling right into the hands of the UN global population controlists, because that's what they want. Is population control. This is the foundation of America. She is now, in Planned Parenthood, is paying for this. They are giving transgender classes to 2nd graders and 6th graders, and Planned Parenthood is paying for. So they're telling little Johnny, you know, Johnny, you could be a girl. I know you're only in the 2nd grade, but you may think you're a little boy, but you could be a little girl. You understand what that does to a kid's mental state? In the 2nd and even the 6th grade, Susie, you could be Johnny. They don't even have self-identity yet. See, they know this. They want to get these kids young and twist them up and ruin our culture. I know I'm stepping out on a limb here, but step out I will. This stuff makes me mad. Because they're getting our children, they're getting our culture. America used to be good. We're not so good anymore. unless we stop this kind of garbage. She is an active supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood. In their stated documents, they're engaging in what they call cultural jihad, the internal cultural takeover of the United States of America, to institute a caliphate inside the United States. Read the Muslim Brotherhood Manifesto. We don't have time to go into that. But that's exactly what they do. She is an active supporter of that. Why do progressives and Muslims, the Muslim Brotherhood, get along so well? Why do progressives, Hillary Clinton and Mohammed Morsi and others in the Muslim Brotherhood, why do they work together so closely? They have a common enemy. I call it C2, the Constitution and the teachings of Christianity. I'm not getting religious, I'm just telling you the truth. Christianity and the Constitution are the enemy of those two things. It's just a fact. They don't like, even going back to the Soviet Union and communism, the one problem, and they even made a statement, the one problem the Soviet Union had with controlling the people was they said, we just can't do anything about those doggone Christians. Because they think they answer to a higher authority, and we can't control them. Well, this is the reason why they hate the church, and I'm talking about real church. That's why they hate it. They can't control them. They will not march to the lockstep of a tyrannical government. Most good religions won't do it, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or any of the others that believe in a higher power over government. They're the enemy of government. They're the enemy of progressivism. And then we've got these characters. We've got the mainstream media, which that's a whole other lecture. They're backing all of this. All of this. Destruction of the foundation of our country in basic human nature and basic morals. And they know exactly what they're doing. You seen this? Getting close to the end, so stay with me. Have you seen this? Just came out. This is the poster, not the poster child, no pun intended, of media deception. If you ever want to bring up a mental image of the media lying to the American people intentionally, this is it. Donald Trump looking at the crying immigrant child. What they're not telling you is this. The child was not looking at Donald Trump, he was looking at a Border Patrol agent as the agent arrested the child and her mother for crossing the border. They don't tell you that, it's not in the picture. The mother was deported in 2013, left her husband and her 3 children, took this child, abandoned her family, and crossed the border with this little girl. They don't tell you that. She left the husband and her children, as I said. They were taken into custody together, and they're still together today. They were never separated, ever. It is a huge lie. There's the actual picture. This is the picture that was taken. You can see the little child here. There's her mother being frisked down, and there's the Border Patrol agent. That's the actual picture. Compare that to what the New York Times just pumped out. That is media deception. And it's also a deflection from what is coming out about the FBI, the Clinton Foundation crime syndicate, and all these things that are breaking in this constitutional crisis are busting at the seams, and they're putting this out to deflect everybody away from this huge criminal scandal that's happening. And they're using the media, and the media, they know what they're doing, and they're willfully doing it. Now, you see I got a little rat down there. There's a joke I like that I'll adapt to this. It goes like this. Why have scientists started using mainstream media journalists in laboratory experiments? Anybody know? There are certain things rats won't even do. So when you want to think about media lies and deception, just remember this. And if you're trying to communicate this to somebody, a college student, a student or other that's not getting it, see if you can just show them this. Say, come on, man, they're lying. They're trying to propagandize and deceive the American public. And some people that are sitting on their couches sprouting roots, they're buying it. It's bad. So, moving on, almost to the end. The DOJ IG report, I have to talk about this. I read this, I boiled this down to as high points as I can get. What's it all about? It was given to the FBI to review before it was released to the public, so the FBI could make changes in their own IG report. How do you think that went? Strzok and Flynn, Clinton, Strzok's in charge of all these investigations. He made a statement, as we all know now in his emails, we will stop Trump. And the question is, who is we? He had every intention of stopping Trump, and he was in charge of the counterintelligence investigation of Clinton, Flynn, and Trump, this guy. Lisa Page made this statement back to him. POTUS, President of the United States, wants to know everything we are doing. I think maybe Obama may have known about this. Remember the presidential daily brief that goes to him every morning? You think maybe this leads back to Barack Obama? Darn right it does. Please, somebody out there take this up. You know, if you're listening to us, please trace it back and get that guy in and start investigating what he did. what he knew. It's serious. We know that Obama was communicating with Clinton over her unsecured server. That came out in the IG report. There are parts of the report that are good. The parts he leaves out is the criminality, or the recommendation for a special counsel. There's more. Comey was insubordinate. Duh. Yeah, he was. Lynch had errors in judgment. Notice I put a question mark. She had an error in judgment, letting a criminal go free. That was an error in judgment. The report goes on. We know that they changed, the FBI changed 302 witness reports after the investigation to cover up what Strzok and the rest of them did in exonerating Hillary Clinton. They actually went in and changed the 302 reports. The FBI did. That's a felony. The IG finally concluded that the FBI's actions were inappropriate and disappointing. Doesn't that break your heart? It breaks my heart that there's not yellow suits and put on there. When in reality, this was criminal activity, you guys. These were felonies that were being committed at the highest levels of government in this country. They were violations multiple of Title 18 USC. And let me show these to you. We're wrapping it up. We get real close. Hang with me. Hillary Clinton, Title 18 USC, 1515B, mishandling classified information, a felony. Did she do that? Clearly. Did Comey prove it? Yes. Lying under oath, USC 1001-1621. She lied under oath repeatedly to the FBI and to the congressional committees. A felony. Destroying subpoenaed emails, erasing hard drives, and the BlackBerries, destruction of evidence, 18 USC 1519, a clear felony. We understand when I made this presentation, we understand it went to Congress. I hope it did. I honestly hope it did. And I hope if it does, it gets somewhere. These are clear felonies. Obstruction of the criminal investigation, 1510. Espionage, clearly 18 U.S.C. 37-793 to 798. The espionage statutes, no question about it. Easy. Comey essentially proved these things publicly. They actually occurred. She was not prosecuted. So let's get into this fellow. 6 feet 8 inches tall, had a pretty golden life most of his life. He's been making millions of dollars since he started in law, since Whitewater. 6 million or so a year is what this guy makes. I think he's quite enamored with himself. But in the Clinton email investigation, obstruction of legal proceedings. Did he do that? Yes, he did. Violation of Title 18, 1515B, that's a felony. Leaking classified information. He leaked confidential and secret documents to his buddy, the professor, so he could leak them to the media to get the special counsel appointed. That's a felony. Lying under oath, he's done that twice, 1621 and 1001. An obstruction of justice in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. That is, in my opinion, one of his most serious charges. He obstructed justice in a serious espionage case intentionally. Those are multiple felonies. And charges need to be levied there. Loretta Lynch, Title 18 again. She threatened regarding Uranium-1. They had an informant in Uranium-1. Anybody hear about that? They had an informant that collected tape recordings, documents, had it all. Loretta Lynch went to him and said, you signed a secrecy oath, and if you talk about that to anybody, we're going to prosecute you. Remember the power of secrecy? She threatened him with jail if he talked to Congress about what he knew. Finally, they just lifted his immunity, and now he's telling them everything. That is a violation of time. Those are 2 felonies on Lynch's part. Obstruction of justice in the Clinton email investigation, again calling it a matter, and obstructing an espionage investigation, and a criminal investigation, and an international money laundering fraud. Put them all together, filing a false FISA affidavit, multiple felonies which resulted in the domestic surveillance of a political opponent. Guess who? James Comey, McCabe, Sally Yates, Dana Bakke, and John Brennan himself also violated all 3 of these felonies, Title 18s, all 3 of them. And they should be charged. Again, Comey, Mueller, Lynch. We recognize these 3 characters again. Gee, they're hanging out together again, aren't they? All 3 of them. They're popping up again. It's been 30 years. Well, yeah. Obstruction of criminal investigation, Clinton Foundation charity fraud. They overlooked it, and they should have prosecuted. All 3 of them. Again, here they are again. Obstruction of a criminal investigation. HSBC criminal drug money laundering case. They let it go and prosecuted no one, including James Comey, who took over the board of directors. Robert Mueller, the straight-laced public servant. the best of the FBI could have. Better than you and I, the top of evolutionary intellectual evolution. What a wonderful man. No. He violated the Fourth Amendment after 9/11 to the tune of national security letters. Anybody remember those? The FBI walks into your employer and says, we want all the files on John, we want his employment records, his financial records, his performance evaluations, and everything else, and if you tell John we were here, it's a felony, we'll put you in jail. They're still using that today. Warrantless searches after 9/11, breaking into Americans' homes without a warrant, under oath before Congress. They asked Mr. Mueller, Director Mueller, how many times did the FBI break into an American's homes without a warrant? Oh, as far as you know, only 47, and they were major terrorist cases. Well, a good staffer went out and did some checking, and some FBI people gave them some information. They came back and said, you know, Mr. Miller, we understand that it's a lot more than 47. We understand that it's at least 1,000. It was, okay, it was 1,000, only 1,000 times. So the committees went out and did some more research, came back and found out it was 2,000 times. Mr. Mueller, you're not being truthful with us. They went out again, we now have concrete information that the FBI broke into 4,000 Americans' homes without a warrant. How many times was it, Director Mueller? And if you can imagine, his response was this. Director Mueller, you have given us 3-4 different accounts of how many times you broke into Americans' homes. Tell us right now, we demand you tell us how many times has the FBI been into an American's home? His response was this. Well, I can't remember. I don't recall. Pardon me, but aren't you in charge of the FBI? I mean, aren't you in charge of breaking into people's homes without a warrant? He can't remember how many times the FBI had done this. Violations, solid violations of the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And what are those? Felonies. Got away with it. Gross abuse of power. Some more. Uranium One, obstruction of the counterintelligence investigation. Based on my background, this makes me want to take mail-offs or something. I mean, that is huge. Obstructing a counterintelligence espionage investigation where Russia got a hold of 20% of our uranium. 20%, and it was a Russian operation. And this guy let it go. USC, 1510, felony. Is he squeaky clean? I don't think so. He's one of the 3 of the syndicate. HSBC cover, remember those arrows that I showed you connecting everybody together? He could have put HSBC officials in jail for 20 years or more for laundering drug money from South America, but he let it go. That's a cover-up of an obstruction of justice and cover-up of an investigation. 2 felonies, 18 U.S.C. 73 and 1510. See what I'm saying? These are clear felonies. These people need to be charged. And you can understand I'm somewhat passionate about this, being a recovering law enforcement officer. So it's bad. And of course he's violated special counsel guidelines in that the guidelines stipulate there has to be a crime, say Russia collusion, and all of his investigation needs to stay with that crime. Russia collusion. He's departed completely from both of those, and now he's investigating Cohen for his legal dealings, Manafort for his business dealings, Papadopoulos for slobbering his beer and saying something stupid, and completely off of the Russia collusion investigation. Oh, by the way, this humble public servant, you know what he makes a year? He represented legally Apple and Facebook, of all people. That's what he did before he became special counsel. He made $3.5 million a year. And yes, he represents the little guy. You know, you and me, and maybe a tenth of that. And then he was such a humble man that he took over the special counsel job, and now he's only making $166,000 a year, probably 10 times what the people makes that he busts and put in jail for lying to investigators. What do you think is going to happen? Mark my words. When Robert Mueller leaves special counsel, watch him go into his next job as special counsel for someone making $6-7 million bucks. Just watch. Just watch. They take care of their own. So this is who is investigating Donald Trump right now. This guy is a mad dog for a prosecution. He's not after Russia collusion. He is after Donald Trump. He's one of the 3 cabal, the syndicate I just showed you, and he has no intention of justice at all. He wants to bring Donald Trump down, and he's going to be well compensated for doing it. So what have we seen as we're wrapping it up? We don't have barf bags, otherwise I'd pass them out, sadly. Multiple violations of the Constitution, which are what? Felonies. Multiple. From high-level government officials, from the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, aka shadow government. Unchecked abuse of secrecy. These people thought they were above the law because they thought Hillary Clinton was going to get elected. They were convinced that Hillary would be elected and all this illegal activity they did would never see the light of day. And here comes this bouffanted businessman and shakes up the whole blooming boat. And there is a political revolution in the United States where your average Joe and Joette got fed up with this stuff and put Donald Trump in office. And they better think about this so-called blue wave, which is not going to happen in November. There's been one revolution, there can be another, because all of us are tired of this stuff. The majority of Americans are fed up with this stuff. No more above the law until now. We're going to put a stop to that, one person at a time. So let's never forget, as I wrap up, a constitutional government serves the people. That's how we exist. That's what makes us breathe as a people in a government, is the Constitution. That the government serves us. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's why we've become the greatest government and people in the history of mankind because of this. That's the way it's supposed to work. Congress and Senate are our representatives, not the representatives of the military-industrial complex or the shadow government. They're our representatives. We elect them. Government violations of the Constitution, of which we have just seen many, are what? Felonies. Yeah, everybody in this room, including me, is going to walk out knowing that these people are guilty of breaking the law and they need to be brought to justice. I hope Congress is listening to this. Who knows? But I hope they are. I hope Jeff Sessions listens to this or something. Anyway. And I have to leave with this because I travel all over the world. I've been in war zones. I've been in allies countries, all over the place. And I've seen people from every walks of life. I spent a lot of my time in Washington. I worked for 5 of the shadow government agencies. I was a military-industrial complex program manager. So I've seen this from all sides. And just seeing the darkness in Washington and what some of these people are involved in, the occult, sex trafficking, blackmail, this entire international syndicate is disgusting. And so I want to leave you with this because I think, just in my humble view, there is more here than meets the eye. I think there is an invisible war. And if anybody's ever read Ephesians 6:12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. In my humble view, that's what's going on behind the scenes in Washington, because this stuff is beyond reason. And it's dark, and it's disgusting, and it involves the occult and abuse of power beyond imagination. So as I wrap up, I always leave everybody with this, because it is so important. The currency of the shadow government, especially their weapon, is fear. They want to make us afraid of it. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. The big scary face, 5 laws are going to destroy you. And then the dog pulls the curtain away and there's this little guy doing the levers. That's the shadow government. Their only weapon is fear. So when people, let me just close with this. When people fear their government, there's tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there's liberty. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Be as generous as you can because it costs me a whole lot of money to get it here. So.
While you're doing that, I guess we can take questions.
Yeah.
Do you want me to stay here or walk over there?
I'll take this and you can stay here. And,
sure.
Put the light on.
While we're helping Steve out in this tremendous effort, I'm a big fan of the Tea Party, and that's why I should go to this. I'm not speaking that much this summer. But let's take questions. Anybody out there have a question? Yeah, sir.
Does Trump, as president, through Sessions, have the ability to abolish the FBI at this moment?
The FBI was not created by the Constitution. It was created by Congress. If the Congress could abolish or reform the FBI, it would be a congressional action. They created it. They could reform it. Good question, Ken. Yes, sir.
Yes, you've given us about almost 2 hours of bad news. I think there was one item of good news. Can you remind me what that was?
Well, one item of good news, it was only 2 hours. But no. I go back to Admiral Mike Rogers, the unsung hero, really. Because I have to research and wallow in this garbage, and it gets pretty depressing at times. The good news is there are good people out there. Most people in the lower parts of the government are good folks that have clearances, hardworking people. That's not the problem. The problem is at the top. This is really a lot of bad news. The good news is this, you guys. I mean, you guys are the heroes. The good news is you're here. You're motivated enough to be here. And I know that you're people of action because you're affiliated with Tea Party and conservative groups. That's the good news because this is a whole lot of bad stuff. You're right. Anybody else?
You mentioned in part of your presentation that some of the information we could Google it. But didn't you also say that Google is basically working with the NSA? Why would they allow that information to be Googled by us to back up some of the research?
Excellent question. If Google was initiated by the NSA, which it was, and has worked with the NGA for Google Earth, which it has, why would we want to use Google for Google searches? Now, Google's the best search engine there is still. And of course, they allow you to search everything you want. That's how they get the convenience in there. There are other alternatives that are coming up. DuckDuckGo, DuckDuckGo is one of them. They're coming up with some alternative searches. Google is a fantastic search engine. That's why people use it. But the fact is, it was started, and its roots go back to the NSA, without a doubt. That's a good question, yeah. And they allow people to do it. That's what they do. It's convenience that causes us to give up our security, including our droids and our cell phones.
Are they tracking us if we do that then?
They're tracking all of us. The privacy is dead, yeah. Your cell phone is the best bug ever invented, and they can listen to you even when the thing is off, and NSA has been caught doing that. Yes, ma'am.
In your opinion, do you think any of these crooks will ever be prosecuted?
In my opinion, do I ever think any of these crooks will be prosecuted? I'm hoping that's one of the reasons I do this. If you would ask me that 4 years ago, I would say no. Now, I think there's a real possibility because this stuff now is out in the public. All these felonies and violations of the deep state. There are books about it now. Even Congress and Senate are talking about the deep state. For the first time in history, it is possible that some of these people can be charged as long as Jeff Sessions gets off his pancake maker and does something. The question is, will he do that or is he going to have to be fired? Yeah, good question, sir.
So I have a question. Jeff Sessions appointed a U.S. attorney based in Salt Lake City, as I recall, to look into this whole FBI matter. Do you have any feel for whether anything will come out of that?
Nothing will come out of that. There's corruption. I think it's the El Paso FBI office and other FBI offices are full of corruption, rife with corruption. No, I don't.
Okay.
I know that's not a good answer, but
Is money the only motivation for why the Clintons never get in trouble, or is it some of these people in fear for their lives?
I think it's the latter. I think it's a massive blackmail network. I think people are in fear of their lives, and I know of actual cases where they are. And those threats have been carried out. One of the clearest cases is Vince Foster, with most of you know about. That is provable, the parts of that case that he was murdered. There are people that are in fear of their lives internationally. They're also in fear of their lives financially because the Clinton syndicate can destroy you financially. If they want to, they can destroy your election, and they can destroy your office. That's how huge they are. So threats and blackmail, I think, are a large part of what they do. These people, in my humble opinion, at the very least, are sociopaths and maybe worse. Yep. We got a question in the front here. Can we get two of them?
Yes, I was wondering if the CIA or other government entities are involved in or profiting off of human and child trafficking.
That's a big one. I have seen no evidence that the CIA is participating in human trafficking. There's a lot of evidence ongoing and continuing that they have participated in drug running, international drug running. Now you got to remember, the CIA is like a secret castle that's compartmented, and everybody in there doesn't know what the upper levels are doing. So I have not seen that. I was in all 4 different directorates. I never saw anything regarding human trafficking. That being said, with the Clinton initiative in Haiti, their program manager was arrested for human trafficking, and she's in jail. I think she just got out of jail. She spent a light sentence. So on that side of things, yes, there is human trafficking. And the CIA, I never saw that.
Before I ask my question, can we get these slides? I missed the deep IG report, the first slide, that's what I was trying to get, I missed it.
Well, I can, if you give Sue or somebody your email address, I'll send you a copy of that particular slide, or I hold on to these for obvious reasons. I
Sure.
want to stay breathing.
Sure.
Although I've kind of stepped over that line already, but I can get you that.
So with the Fed, the Federal Reserve was given its charter by Congress, and so theoretically they could revoke it.
Yes.
I don't hold my breath out, but what can we do as taxpayers and individuals? How do we fight this corruption?
Yeah, I mean, I get that question hundreds of times, both after these messages and on the website. You know, what can we do to stop this freight train? The Federal Reserve being an example, the power is so huge over us that we can't stop it unless there is some kind of legal civil revolt. And I mean civil, I don't mean the way what the dark left side is doing now. I mean a civil revolt where we start standing up and demanding an audit of the Fed en masse by the people. It worked for Martin Luther King. His whole movement was based on peaceful, nonviolent demonstration, and anybody that got violent, he threw him out of his organization, and it worked. I think that's what we need today in reference to this. We need to stay peaceful, we need to stay prayerful, we need to stay unified and activated, and then we can make a difference as he did. And that's the only way, because it is a monster. That's a good question, well, thank you.
Was the election of Barack Obama orchestrated by Hillary Clinton, or was that a complete surprise to her?
Barack Obama?
Yeah.
Barack Obama was groomed to be the president by the shadow government and the deep state. There are no records of his financial donations that propelled him to office. He never held a job. There are no records from his college transcripts or whether he did well or whether he didn't. He was catapulted out of nowhere up into the mainstream light of politics and eventually the President of the United States, and became the most subversive president we have ever had in our history. And Hillary was second rate to the power that the global order had in him, and they just pushed her aside, which they will do.
Can you comment on the rumors of the false flag events that occur in the U.S. and what do you know about that?
Yeah, you know, that's a tough one because, yes, the United States has engaged in false flags. For example, I had Admiral Ace Lyons on my radio program, the Intelligence Hour, and he corroborated this. Pearl Harbor was a false flag. The government knew, they had the intelligence that the Japanese were going to attack. Roosevelt and others had that information and they withheld it, moved the battleships out of the waters and allowed the attack to occur in conjunction with the United Kingdom to bring us into war. The sinking of the Lusitania, where we started the war with Germany, that was instigated by the United States. And the people were lied to and that thing was intentionally sunk. It goes on and on and on. The Free Syrian Army in Syria is a false flag. Anybody heard of Operation Gladio, where the CIA staged false terrorist attacks in Italy? I think they killed 419 people, blowing things up and making it look like the Italian government did it, when in reality it was the CIA and some Nazi holdovers. Yes, our government has engaged in false flags. I've got a record, I think, of 10 of them. They have, and it is a very difficult psychological line to cross. Most people won't do it. You cross the line. Will our government do that sort of thing? And people wind up dying by the thousands, and when you realize that it has been done, that's a mental line a lot of people don't want to cross, but it's happened. It's happened. Sir?
Let's see. The left is really good at labeling people and labeling us and labeling people. And I look around the room and I see a lot of seasoned citizens here. How do we reach the youngsters and change their perceptions as to what's going on? Because, you know, I've got cancer, stage 4, so I'm not going to be here. So I'm not going to be able to influence any youngsters and get them to see what the evidence is and what you're pursuing.
Boy, what a great question. How in the world, excuse me, do we get this message to the young people that are going to be the politicians of the future, the lawyers of the future, the professors? How do we get to them, especially in the colleges? Because they have education, they own it. And that's a good question, because if we don't get to them, it's over. We're all here probably over 20 or over 30, 40, 50. We kind of get the idea, but the younger generation doesn't. What do we do? I get that question a lot. We've got to get this message into high schools and into colleges, and the way I cloak it is shadow government. A lot of college kids want to know about the shadow government, and we got to get in there, we got to get this message to them so that they hear it, and it's not easy because they have the news media, it's lock, stock, and barrel. They have social media, lock, stock, and barrel. They have Hollywood, lock, stock. That's what's against us, and that's one heck of a question because the answer is really tough. We've got to get the message to the young people, and I believe Jason Goodman, my friend over here, and by the way, he's on Patreon at Crowdsource the Truth 2 and PayPal.me. Jason Goodman, is that right, with Crowdsource? Alternative media, and that's the reason I've got him there. He's live streaming this to, we don't know how many people right now, I guess internationally.
1,200 on YouTube right now, and many more on other platforms.
1,200 on YouTube right now as we're talking, and then many more on other platforms. That's how we do it. That's why I work with Jason. That's why I have him here, because I think it's our last hope, especially for the young generation. We've got to get to them this way. We've got to get to them over social media, and we've got to get to them over YouTube. Yeah. Sir?
Do you have any further comment on Judicial Watch?
I sure do. Glad you asked that. I'm a huge fan of Judicial Watch. It was Judicial Watch through an FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, that broke the scandal of the Clinton secret server. It was Judicial Watch that got those first batch of emails. Man, if you're going to support anyone, and financially support Judicial Watch. They are a band of heroes. They're good, honorable, ethical men and women. They're attorneys, God help them, but they managed to make it through that. That's the best organization you can support. Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm a big supporter of Judicial Watch.
Somebody asked a minute ago about how we get the young people involved. You've heard of him, I'm sure, Dinesh D'Souza?
Yes, yeah.
Have you ever thought about making his presentation into a movie?
Yes. It's happening as we speak. I can't say much more than that. Thank God for that. Yes.
I guess I have a comment and then a question. My comment is I just got back from the Republican convention as a delegate. And as was mentioned, you might as well have said it was geriatrics united. We have a problem in the whole conservative side. And I think one of the areas that we need to be emphasizing is what's going on in our school districts, in our community colleges. I know that I'm talking to my school board member about curriculum and what's actually going on. We're all interested in how our schools are administered. We need to get into how our schools are teaching our children.
Yes, absolutely.
And the doctrine of the indoctrination that's going on.
Right. Bullseye. Absolutely.
Thank you. Here's my question.
Yes, please.
Here's my question. It has to do with the budget. We just passed the largest budget, and I was very surprised, not especially with the Congress, because I think a lot of those people are bought and sold. But I'll tell you, I was surprised that Trump signed it so quickly and so easily. Would you comment on that, please?
Yeah, there was some strategy behind that. If you remember, after he signed it, he said, I am not happy with this bill at all. I think the bill comes up for renewal in 3 years, I think, where he has a chance to sign it or veto it again. So he allowed it, based on what the speech I heard, he allowed this one to go through to keep things running, but it's going to come up again, and then he's going to hit it a lot more seriously because out of his own statement, he did not like the bill at all. So he's got another chance to shoot it down.
This is more of an observation, and maybe you can comment on it. One agency you didn't talk about or include in the shadow government was the IRS.
Well, some of you in this group, Steve and company, know about the IRS. My lovely wife, when I first came out and was talking about the shadow government, we included the IRS. Remember, hon? Then I got audited. From the shadows. I got audited with a $16,000 IRS debt for a state I didn't even live in, Georgia. And I fought them for 6 months while they did their investigation to get them to drop that $16,000 that they said I owed them. That's a doggone good question. We know the IRS is out of control, and I think that's a good point. That's a very good point. And I have my ideas on how we can bring them back, but it's kind of courageous. Just don't pay your taxes, everybody, for 1 quarter and see what happens. But you're right. That's a very good point. Yes.
I'll add on to that.
Yeah.
Judicial Watch is a great organization. I actually contribute to them every year. But the ACLJ, Jay Sekulo's group, were our lawyers for Allen Area Patriots. And before I basically signed and sealed the deal, I made sure that each one of the board members was covered by the ACLJ, just in case they came after us individually as individuals, not just board members on a $2,000 a year budget tea party. Okay? So if you've got any extra money, you know, Judicial Watch, ACLJ, they're protecting our freedoms.
Yeah, that's right. ACLJ is another great organization. Jay Sekulow is now one of the chief counsel for Donald Trump. I think that's outstanding. Yes, sir.
I guess my question is there's so much obviously negative things that we've told tonight. Is there really any chance for the white hats, the good people in the agencies, in the bureaucracy, do they have a chance to expose all this and actually do something about it? I'm a millennial, and so I'm an older millennial. You know, what really would be appealing to go into a government or an agency or anything if it's already co-opted so bad? Should I just stay out and go around everything like Trump did and be an investigative reporter, journalist, expose everything?
That's a great question. No, I think you should become a citizen sleuth, a citizen investigator, like Jason and others, and get out there and do your own independent investigations. If you go the route I did, you're going to sign a secrecy agreement, they're going to bind you for life, and you won't be able to do a thing where it's really needed. So no, make journalism reborn, start again, become a citizen journalist, a citizen sleuth. If you have to get a podcast or whatever, do that, because then you're not bound by the monster, and you can get the truth out a lot more than if you're on the inside. That being said, I know for a fact there are white hats in the FBI, in the intelligence agencies that are sick of this stuff, and they're doing everything they can to percolate up and stop it. They're there. And there's a lot of them. They're out there. So there's some good people in government that are true white hats. I know one that's a retired Air Force general who's heading up a lot of that, and it's pretty encouraging. But yeah, I'd recommend you do this in education on the outside under the Constitution, using your freedoms, because I think that's the most powerful way. Sir?
As opposed to having something like FBI IG, could we do something like that, like U.S. Bureau of Investigation that only investigates the FBI, the NSA, and so forth, and that they can't say anything is classified, go anywhere, any door, look at anything, prosecute anybody? Is that what we need? And somebody to just investigate these people?
Well, I have one thing to say. You are the man. That is one of the recommendations we've been making, is that there needs to be a branch of the U.S. government that investigates objectively the other branch and has a division represented by the people that analyzes classification decisions and the use of secrecy and whether it's constitutional or not. That's one of the things we propose in other elections, but that's an outstanding point. Yeah.
At the risk of being a conspiracy theorist, is 9/11 bring any thoughts to your mind about that it was strictly coming from the other half of the world?
I knew somebody was going to ask that. Let me put it this way, and just coming from an analyst point of view, and I've done a lot of reading about that, there are things about 9/11 that do not add up. I think there's about 70 different things that were not addressed in a 9/11 Commission report that are either erroneous or don't add up. That is a certainty. What happened? Something really out of the ordinary happened that was not just a terrorist attack. It was highly out of the ordinary. Tower 7 coming down without a plan. I mean, there's just so many things. We're going to do a radio broadcast. You have to be careful with this. It is so complex, and you have to study it so much so you stay in balance. But in my humble view, there's some things that do not add up that are quite concerning. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am, we're in the back there.
Thank you for being here tonight. My question goes back to Jeff Sessions. Earlier, a gentleman asked about that. Is there anything that we can do as the people? Sometimes we've been asked to call our congressmen, call our representatives. Shall we all start calling his office and ask him to take action on our behalf?
Absolutely. Your congressman and the DOJ and Sessions office and the White House, I understand, and congressmen know this, one letter they know represents 1,000 people who think that way but didn't take the time to write. So one phone call means several people to these folks. I would call them, I would harass them, I would pound on them, I would pound on General Sessions to act and to move, because this is so much of this rests on his shoulders. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm so frustrated with him, it's beyond the pale. I would pound on his office, your congressman, your senator, and the White House, and demand that Sessions take some action, because it's gone way beyond the limits of what should have been done. Yeah, thank you.
Do you have an opinion on the Convention of States as a mechanism for solving this problem?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Mark Levine, and I'll even admit that I'm a fan of Rush Limbaugh. You know, it's funny, is Susan Rice, who was part of the Obama administration, the NSC, Susan Rice's son is a fan of Rush Limbaugh, a real conservative. And they get along well. She tolerates, it's one of those bizarre things. But yes, I think there's a good side of that, and there are some things. There's a possibility Roe v. Wade may be changed. Personally, I hope it will. That was based on a lie. We all know she was never raped. She's come out herself now and said that, and she's now pro-life. Convention of States could address that and some other issues, and a lot of the states are tired of California and others dominating some of these processes. So it's a good thing. The bad thing is some state could surprise somebody, a liberal state, and pop something out that nobody wants, and that would be the danger. So I've heard both sides of that. I think I kind of lean towards the Convention of States because it gives power to the states where it belongs, and some people that I respect, Levine and others, think the same way. So I lean in that direction, but there are two sides to that, yeah.
So our president has said that he's going to basically leave the Justice Department to run itself, is what I've gathered from his comments. But he's major frustrated with Sessions, and I hear that he could just order certain documents to be declassified.
Yeah, he could.
What do you make of the president's decision to stay out of this?
It's a political, tactical decision. I heard somebody say this, and it was it's so true. He goes, when it looks like Donald Trump is losing, he wins. and when it looks like he's going down and they got him, it turns it around, and it turns out to be right, and he wins. There's a lot of strategy here involving Sessions and the DOJ and the FBI and all of this. If you were to move too quickly, I think there are some congressmen and senators that would be walked out in handcuffs. We'd have a constitutional crisis because some of this criminality runs so deep. I think they understand that. They're taking it really, really slow because of that, but I think they're fully aware of what these people are doing. And I think President Trump and now Bolton and Rudy Giuliani have every intention of pursuing these things. They just got to be real careful. Is that it? Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. You're America's best, and I really appreciate it. I love you.